For coming, and for those that are watching via the web, if you have any questions, the email address is right up there, and we will go ahead and get to your questions. I'm sure everybody knows why we're here. We have SB or HB? SB 736.
Oh, that's HB.
Oh, HB 7. I don't know. There's a lot of SBs, HBs. They're all in there together. So, but we really appreciate all the input. And what you're going to go over today is kind of here's a first draft. And it is a draft. We want to get everybody's input, but it's always easier to work from a starting point instead of just coming in with a blank piece of paper. So we really do want everybody's input. And let's go around and introduce ourselves. So if you want to go ahead and start down there.
Hi, Hector Villarreal, Director of Education, IEDT San Antonio.
Oscar Ozer, Director of Enrollment Management, North American College, Houston.
Josh Konchetinkaya, North American College.
Mira Hoffman, AMA Graduate School of Integrative Medicine.
Brian Yarbrough, University of Phoenix.
And Chris Helmuller, University of Phoenix.
Beverly Lucas, Associate Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness, College of Biblical Studies, Houston. I used up the most words.
You must have big business cards.
Christy Beard, AMA Graduate School of Integrative Medicine.
Nanette Glenn, Vice President of Academic Affairs, Argosy University, Dallas.
I'm Rick Skinner. I'm the Vice President for the Texas campuses of Westwood College.
Kevin Fagan, Provost of Northwood University.
Janet Banky, Director of Planning here at the Coordinating Board. And if I can just interject one thing from yesterday, a lot of people online were having trouble hearing, and they asked many times, please speak into the mic. So,
Gabriela Borcoman, Planning and Accountability here at Coordinating Board.
George Miller, Chancellor of American Continental University.
I'm John Allen Chalk. I'm a private attorney, but today my head is Career Education Board.
Tom Bonesteel, I'm District Manager for ITT Technical Institutes in Texas.
I'm Steve Malutich. I'm the Campus President at American Intercontinental University, and we are a school within Career Education Corporation.
Dr. Tammy Erickson, Regional Director of Regulatory Operations, Career Education Corporation.
Fred White, Program Director, Higher Education Coordinating Board, the Academic Affairs and Research Section.
I'm Jim Ray. I'm Director of Houston Programs for Tulane University.
Yorgos Bakamitos, Assistant Dean for Executive Education, Tulane University.
Linda Fontaine. I'm Chair of the Board of Directors for AOMA Graduate School of Integrative Medicine.
Hi, I'm Liz Cartwright, Director of Student Services for Troy's Western Region.
Dave Ruffley, Director of Academics, Troy, Western Region.
Okay, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. And any kind of feedback or input we can get, and if you know of a place where we can get some of this information easier or faster or whatever, we will be very appreciative. So I'm going to turn it over to Fred at this point.
Yes, well, thanks again. I want to thank everybody for coming and giving me the input, the replies into the emails and everything, so that worked out really good. I'm sorry I missed some of the name tags, but it was quite a hectic last couple of weeks. A couple of administrative things. We're scheduled from 1 to 4 o'clock today. We got some time either way, but you may not have that much time, so we want to make sure that we fill the whole 3 hours, because it's going to take a lot of work, and you'll see later on as we get started with this. So we're going to probably go to the whole time. If you need to go to the restroom or get something to drink, please feel free to just go, and we don't have any scheduled breaks is what I guess I'm trying to say. We don't have any scheduled breaks. The restrooms are right on the other side of the hall, and the same with the water fountain and the concession stand there. So we're going to have an agenda here. And again, that's pretty much our platform. But as we talk about things, if something comes up where we need to spend more time with those things, we can do that as well. But we do need to end right about 4 o'clock, and we'll try to keep everybody on task on that one. Okay. As we get, I'm responsible for the emails. So anybody has a question, I'll kind of just pop in the middle of that and try to answer those questions when I get information or a question from somebody who's watching on the webcast. Okay. So
Okay, here we go. Just to let you know, yesterday we met with the two-year institutions, and we had said 1 to 4, and I think we were about 4:15, and we had to kind of rush at the end. So as we go along, if we see that the discussions are running long and there are particular issues that really we need to maybe investigate a little more on our part, we'll probably just say, okay, we'll get back to that and write you about it later, and then keep going, because we'd like to make as much progress as we can today. We're hoping that maybe we won't have to have another meeting, that maybe if there are issues that need to be resolved, we can do those through email follow-up. So we'll have a pretty busy schedule here, and it's going to be a very, very informal meeting. Anytime you have a question or a comment, just speak up, and the only caveat is please speak into the microphone so that those people who are listening online can hear. I'm going to start with a little bit of an introduction to the legislation. I know that we've already sent these bills out to you, and so this will probably be just something you've already seen, but we'll go through first SB 1534, which is the one that requires the accountability system for degree granting career schools and colleges. And in that bill, it says that we could create institutional groupings if that seems appropriate. That is one of the very first things we'll talk about today. After I do these PowerPoint introductions to the bills themselves, I'll show you our accountability system for I'll show it to you for the universities, really. But, and then we'll show you also the online resume for the universities, so you'll have an idea of what it is we're talking about. But within particularly the online resumes, we report data for in-state peers for the institutions. And at least with the universities and the public community colleges, we've divided those institutions into groupings because we feel like it makes for better comparison. And since we're going to be using an average of more like institutions makes a lot more sense. When we worked with our public universities, we have universities all the way from the size of the University of Texas at Austin all the way down to Sul Ross, which only has about 1,000 students. So you've got 50,000 to 1,000. An average across all those institutions probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. So we break the universities into categories based on their mission and the size of their doctoral programs and things like that. So we'll discuss with you whether you think you'd like to be broken into groups. We have started with a listing of your institutions with some possible groupings on there. So that'll be the first thing we'll talk about. Okay, so the next item in the bill is that we consult with the institutions about what's in the accountability system. So that's what we're doing here today. The coordinating board can adopt rules if it's necessary to implement the accountability system, and we haven't adopted any yet. If there are some issues that come up in which you feel like we need rules, we can discuss whether that seems appropriate. And we have to report back to the legislature on affected entities, meaning the ones that should be part of the process that haven't participated with us. There's a definition in the accountability bill on what a career school or college means, and this is straight from that legislation. It means that you offer course or courses of instruction in Texas. When we've asked our general counsel exactly what that means, he says, even if you're an online institution, if you offer a course that would require an internship or a clinical appointment here in Texas in order to fulfill the requirements of a course you're taking, then that means you have a physical presence here in Texas. So those institutions would be involved in this process. This next slide is on those institutions that don't have to be part of the accountability system process, and that's for institutions physically located in another state that have legal authority to operate in that state and to award degrees, that are regionally or nationally accredited, and that you don't have anything except online or correspondence programs here in Texas. So that those institutions don't have to be involved in this part of the process. And if you do have questions about that, and need to talk with someone, Fred is really the appropriate person to talk with. Gabriella and I are really on the data side, and so if you have data questions, you can write to us. And our emails are on the handout that has the PowerPoint slides on them. Okay, on to House Bill 736, and this is on the online resumes for career entities. And the purpose of the online resumes is to improve and coordinate dissemination of information on the operation and performance of the schools. And we're to present that information in a form that's as nearly as possible similar to what we do in the online resumes for lower division public institutions. Now, what we've done for this group is really model it more on what we have on the online resumes for universities, because you're more similar to them than you are to our two-year institutions. And we're to make it as consistent as possible across the institutions and make it easily accessible and understandable to the public. And those are the links that are a little hard to see. I tried to change that color and it just didn't want to change for me. But anyway, so now if you'll bear with me while I try to figure out how to get the best way to get to our, that's not what I wanted to do. Just a second. Okay, so this is the coordinating board's homepage. Probably some of you are familiar with it. There are a couple of ways to get to the accountability system here. One of them is by going to the Closing the Gaps, and you can see in the second drop down there the accountability system is listed. And the online resumes are actually listed right here as required by statute. The online resumes, everything that we have in there is prescribed by statute. They're very detailed in what the legislature wanted to see in the online resumes, and we're also required to put it on our homepage, and institutions are required now to put it on their homepages in a font that's bigger than most of the other things on the homepage. So they want to make sure it gets the attention of the people who are using institution pages. For me, most often, I just go to our data resources page, click on the top level, and then go over here because this is the page I'm most familiar with. So I'll take you to the accountability system. When you press on that link, it comes up and you can see each of the types of institutions mentioned under these areas. The accountability system is modeled after our Closing the Gaps higher education plan. So it has categories of participation, success, excellence, and research. And in addition to those, we've added institutional efficiency and effectiveness. There's a lot of information here. When you first open it up, it always opens to a statewide page, and that would be a statewide page for public institutions. And then you can drop down. I went to the health-related, didn't I? Didn't mean to do that.
Your names will be there, and your group will be added.
So in each of those bullets that are under there, you see we've got the categories of public institutions. We'll add an extra bullet, and it will say career colleges and schools. So now I'll try to get to the university one. And
Under that participation heading.
Okay. We'll do it under each of the headings because there's a heading for each of the categories. And as you can see, you can navigate across here. Once you're in a file, you can navigate between the various sections up there. But on the first page, I should have probably scrolled down a little bit. It has participation, success, excellence, and research, each with the categories of schools listed below it. So we'll just pick an institution here and go to their page, largely similar to what we have for the statewide information. And you can see we start off with enrollment information. We have information for out-of-state peers. That information and the information for the public institution all comes from the IPED system in order that we're using the same definitions for each of those. So that's what is reported by the institutions in IPEDs. And then to give more detail, we have an extra page here that breaks it out into smaller categories. We probably won't do a detailed page for you guys. Let's see. Okay. And as we scroll down, you'll see that the top part says key measures. With the accountability system, we've tried to have just a few key measures for each of the categories, and then to give more context for individual schools below that, we have contextual measures, and you have to click on this link in order to make those contextual measures show up. But there's a lot more information down here on each of the types of the institutions. So that's the way the individual pages of the accountability system work, and you get only one institution at a time when you're looking at those pages. You can get it to print out for you in a PDF fashion there, but I want to show you one of the other aspects of accountability that we find most of the public institutions who use the accountability system a lot don't go so much to the individual pages. They go to this box of interactive access to data, and if you just say go here, it will take you to this screen, where you can click on these pluses beside each of the categories of measures and get the individual components that are reported on the top level pages. So here you see more plus signs, and that means there are more breakdowns below that. And so I always encourage everybody who's going to use this site to go down all the way until you don't have plus signs anymore, because otherwise you may get a lot more data than you really anticipated or wanted. So here you see under head count, enrollment, total, you've got all these categories, and if you just had clicked and said, yeah, this is what I want, you would have gotten this for each of the years, and because each of the years is a separate column, you've got like a zillion columns of information there. But so at this point, when you click on the plus, you'll see it's just years of data. If you want all the years, you can just click right there and it'll do it. If you want to use the data, you can go and download it in Excel. That's what we find most people end up doing. That way you can sort and look at the data in any way you want to. And you can also pick the institutions that you want to follow. These are the groupings. I mentioned peer groupings for the universities. These are the peer groups. And so if you click on those, you get an average for those peer groups. Just to show you how this works, I'm just going to generate now without going into Excel to make it a little easier. And there you see the way the interactive data is presented. So you can see all the years of data go across, and then the institutions that you picked go down the side. So we anticipate that once we have the career school information in the accountability system, it will also be able to be accessed in this fashion. Okay, any questions about accountability? Okay. Then I'm going to go back to our data homepage and show you the online resumes. And for the public institutions, there are two kinds of resumes, one for prospective students, parents, and the public, and a second one for legislators and other policymakers. The legislation says it's to be modeled after the online resume that's for prospective students and the public. So we'll just go up here and choose universities as the institution type. When you do that, it gives you a drop down of the institutions, and this is where the career schools would appear in this list. You can just pick one, you can pick a date there and generate. And there it is. So we'll talk about those a little later, and we can go back to this website and show you the similarities between what we're proposing for you and what is actually in the system for the public universities. So that's the online resume. And now we're going to move on to the topic of groupings if there are no questions on this. So Gabriella is going to take over here and talk to you about the groups that we're suggesting.
You have a handout you had there on the table with our first draft. And again, this is just to start the discussion. And what I did was putting everybody who offers bachelor degrees and above in one group, but then dividing them in subgroups. Institutions, again, I took this information from iPad. The way that the institution was listed in iPad as highest degree offered and other characteristics. Also, enrollment, what you have on this sheet is the name, the annual enrollment that was reported in iPads, and the enrollment you reported to us in December. So based on these items, I have 3 subgroups. One with institutions that offered as highest degree a bachelor degree, institutions who go beyond the bachelor degree. And the third group is a little bit shady. This is the group of institutions that offer mainly online courses. So I think this warrants more discussion. I'm not sure if we should combine them with the others or leave them separate. So we'll discuss that. Also, these institutions did not report separately in iPads for Texas. And I think there are a couple of others that I couldn't find. But some of the data that we'll discuss will be taken from iPads, especially financial data, because you don't report to us financial data. And I'm not sure how to get that data only for your students in Texas. So that's a discussion that we'll have later. So for each group, looking at enrollment, it seemed to me that even though a number of institutions offered up to a bachelor degree, the difference in size could be seen. So it was the third subgroup. I divided each of them in small, medium, and large. Now, the cutoff enrollment was where it seemed to me that you can see a breakout of the enrollment. I'm not saying that's the right enrollment. So again, it's just to start the discussion. I'm sorry, I tried to do some highlights on your sheets, but it didn't print out. But for example, on the very first sheet, Center for Advanced Legal Studies, I'm not sure if anybody is here from there, or College of Biblical Studies, Houston. Okay, if you look, you reported in iPads 824 students, and to us 1,052. That's a lot of students difference. Mm-hmm. So we have a question, why is this? We should be very close. I'm not saying identical, but very close. And because of this type of discrepancy, where exactly am I placing your institution? Because based on one enrollment should be in one group, based on the other in the other group. So we have several, not many, like Strayer University, reported in iPads 129, to us 800 students. Now that's, again, a lot of students, and where exactly we are placing them. So any input you may have, why these discrepancies? I think yesterday we got some input from the 2-year. It happened with their institutions also. And so we'd like to understand, maybe we need more clarity in our instruction to you, or maybe it wasn't necessary, but we should be as close as possible with iPads reporting.
Maybe where we need to start is whether you individually and as a group think it makes sense to have groupings, or if you'd rather have all of your institutions in just one big group.
And how many groups, if you think we need groups, how many groups would make sense? Because you know yourself better than we do.
Well, if I could, this question represent Northwood University. When we talk about peer institutions, our institution is unlike many of the institutions here, we're a full-service residential campus. We have athletic programs, et cetera. So the peer part is only purely from a course offerings perspective. And I think the same would other institutions looking at us would say the same thing. We're not necessarily a peer institution with Northwood University. So that's one question I have on the groupings. We've narrowed it just to, it appears, a course offering opportunity from the accountability, but that's not necessarily, when I look at the list, we would now put ourselves with these other institutions based on the whole mission of the institution, and I don't think many of them would put themselves with us either from that perspective.
So does that mean that you don't think any groupings are needed?
I don't know how we fit, using the term peer institutions, which was used earlier. I would not look at these as peer institutions for us as they're grouped here. The full mission, scope, purpose of the university, of the institution.
For example, you don't feel like you should be in the same group with any because you're different?
I think we fall into this category because we do not have the SACS accreditation. We are North Central regionally accredited. We've gone through all the coordinating board elements. We're in athletic conferences with ICUT institutions, et cetera. But the element that keeps us from being an ICUT institution or the others is the SACS accreditation. That's it. The majority of the other things, again, full-service residential campus, athletic programs, student services, many of those things, like the other institutions, we are, from our perspective, closer to those institutions. And it's not a right or wrong thing. I'm just saying peer institutions looking at all the elements that an institution delivers. But we fall into this area because we don't have the SACS accreditation.
But you have North Central.
We have North Central, correct.
But that's regional.
That's regional, but it's ICUT institutions' criteria is SACS accreditation. And when you look at most of the coordinating board legislation, SACS accreditation is the key component when you look at 2 or 3 of the elements that separates institutions.
The way it works, if you are an ICAT institution, you don't fit into this group. But if you are not, and you are not public, you are not ICAT, then you're here.
And that's maybe, I know Fred and I and the coordinator, for 8 years we've had these discussions and beyond that, so a little different there. The one comment I did want to make on the enrollment, I know that does happen sometimes, is IPEDS is a snapshot on a certain day. There are some institutions that will take the whole academic year because students are graduating throughout the year, entering, et cetera. So that could be part of the discrepancy in the enrollment, where IPEDS is taking that fourth Tuesday in October or whatever they take.
This is annual. This is annual.
Yeah, but they take that snapshot. IPEDS takes a snapshot on a date. What's your enrollment on this specific date? Where there are institutions and others that will say, during the whole academic year, this was the total number of students that we serviced during that whole academic year. So those two numbers can vary if that's how they approach it.
We did discuss this with the 2-year institutions yesterday. They suggested that we use September and October because what you report to us is monthly. And so we were going to unduplicate your enrollments in September and October for the fall headcount participation. That's the first of the measures in the accountability system. But because we knew that there are issues with that fall headcount, that's the reason Gabriella used the unduplicated annual.
Yeah, and my suggestion would be if the IPEDS is one that we would, our institute, just submit the IPEDS number, if that's what the coordinating board's.
Well, we would prefer for things you report to us, we're going to try to run the measures ourselves. For those things you don't report to us, we're going to use the IPEDS information. The reason to do that is because we have learned from experience with the publics that it gets more attention on the part of the institution in terms of reporting accurately to us. And so when we use our data, we then get better reporting over time by the institution. So we'll use our data for this more.
If I may just add to the discussion about the peer institutions, one of the things for AOMA is we're an Oriental medicine program, and so our peers out of this group would probably be American College of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, as well as Texas College of TCM. And so it looks like these groups are based on, I don't know if there's a size limit that you did from small,
It's the
medium.
size.
Okay, so over 200 puts us in the medium, is that correct?
I think so, for that particular group, yeah.
So just to maybe reiterate, it for us, a peer would probably be more reflective of the type of programs that you offer within your school, not necessarily just the size.
Yeah, this is going to be a difficult thing for us to decide as a group how to do this. If the peer groups are too small, then they're really not very functional.
Right.
And so we tend to prefer a little bit larger groups, and so you can get more of a real average of what the peers are doing. But we know, and just like you say, you're all very different. Our public institutions, which don't even vary as much as you do, they always comment to us, but I'm not like that other institution. So you guys are really distinct from one another. We understand that. And I think that probably with the accountability system, if we report the peer data, and it's mostly going to be in the online resume, we can put something about the differences between institutions. But it seems like either we do it as one giant group, which probably doesn't have much meaning at all, or we break it into some categories. And we don't want to break it into categories that are so small that we only have one or two institutions in the categories, if we can come to an agreement on that.
I have a comment from behind you, and I don't know how best to get your attention. Hi. But to kind of build on that piece, I wonder, as I look at the break between small and medium, there's only 2 or 3 that are below 300 in the medium for enrollment.
Which group?
And then it jumps up to 600, I'm sorry, 4-year bachelor's and above degree institutions. And I wonder if maybe the break might be a little closer to like 300 for small and above 3.
For 500, it can be 500. It didn't seem to be 500.
Yeah, it just seemed that between when you look at the medium, there's 2 or 3 that are in the 200 category, and then the next smallest one is 600. So possibly having the break between small and medium be somewhere closer to 300 to 500 might then make at least the size of the institutions more comparable. Just
So you
observation.
think between a small and a medium should be around, you said 300 or 500, which one?
400.
So it sounds right for everybody?
I think this data is very different. I think people reported it differently because I know some of these numbers are more annual than what you would find on that campus as their student population. So maybe part of it would be to go back and understand whether you're talking about the average population on a campus is 1,000 students or it's 200 students.
No,
'Cause
this is whatever you reported on iPad as being your enrollment during an academic year. And that's what reported to us as being the enrollment in an academic year, unduplicated. So I don't know how you reported it. For us, you should have reported every student on your campus that took classes during September 1st to August 31st. Every one of them. So I am not sure how you reported that.
That's how ours is. I can tell by looking at the numbers, but I just question if maybe some of the others, we were apples and oranges or something, you know.
It shouldn't be apple and oranges. That's why we looked at what you reported to us, what you reported to iPads. Theoretically, everybody should report the same thing, using the same definitions. So
We do have a question from emails. So I'll just go ahead and read it from Cheryl Thompson from Capella University. She asked 2 questions. One, Capella is listed as a large institution, which we are according to iPads, but since you're looking for Texas-only data, we likely would not be large. That poses a problem. The iPads data is institutionally across the whole U.S. It would not be possible to use iPads to get Texas-only data.
well, as I started my discussion here, the institutions in that group, I could not find any enrollment specific for Texas in iPads. Capella didn't start reporting to us either. So quite frankly, I have no idea in what group it should be. I just put it somewhere. As I said, this is a draft because I don't know one way or another. I don't know if it's medium or smaller. And the same is with a lot of the ones on that list.
And for those of you who are listening online, the list that Gabrielle is talking about is not the one that went out originally. She's put the enrollments on there in addition, so we can send that out to everybody who would be interested in it, so they can see but not right this minute, of course.
I didn't realize she doesn't have this, and she cannot see that I don't have an enrollment of any kind for them.
And the second question is similar. It's could the slides from the presentation be emailed to us so we can?
Yes. We have emailed everything except the PowerPoint, and the groupings have changed, and they
Right, the
just changed
PowerPoint, they
a
asked
few
about the
minutes ago.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So, do you think the bachelor degree only and bachelor and above is a fair grouping? Or you think everybody should be together regardless of the level of degree? I did that because in the public, with the public universities, we separate if they have up to a master degree, doctoral degree, doctoral group. Those institutions have doctoral degrees, but just one or two, compared with the UT Austin and others who have a lot of them. So we sort of group them based on the level of graduate degrees that they offer. So that was my reasoning, but I'm not sure if it makes sense for you, or should we keep them that way?
Can I ask a question? Would you report how would you report if our university started with a program that was below bachelor's, and we have the whole range from certificate programs through doctoral degrees?
As we go through the accountability system, you'll see that we'll report number of degrees at every level that you offer.
Okay.
So it's just that it's about for the resumes, and that will be in accountability system too. Who are the institutions that are mostly like you that you should be similar in performance somehow?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's because you have groupings for bachelor's degrees and then those that are above. So if
we have groupings for those who are only bachelor's degrees and
Okay.
those who then offer bachelor's and above.
And above. So, because there is another issue though. It came up yesterday with ITT. They are approved to offer bachelor degrees, but they said, well, 90% of what we do is associate degrees, so they wanted to be moved with the 2-year.
Right.
So that's another discussion that I plan with you. Is anybody here that says, okay, we agree with this grouping, but even though I offer doctorate, I would like to be with the others? Or if that's the case, maybe we should have just one group, not separate bachelor and above.
We offer bachelors, but we start, like she said, at diploma, certificates, probably more associates than bachelors. So if you word this bachelor's degree only, it doesn't sound right.
No,
But
it's
if
up to bachelor,
bachelors,
yes,
then
up
people
to
probably
bachelor.
will understand that that's what you're comparing yourself against. And I don't have a problem with that, as long as people understand. Like you said, then it's stratified, how you offer it from bachelor's down.
Yes.
And then I think by size makes sense, and with the adjustment she recommended, it looks like then your sizing makes sense.
And yesterday, we said the people who are institutions that offered primarily associate's degrees should come to the meeting yesterday when it was mainly about 2-year institutions. So we assume that most of you here, with maybe a couple exceptions, are offering mostly bachelor's and above. Is that correct? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Maybe I'm missing the trees for the woods here. Is the purpose of this for potential students to go online and compare universities? Is that the basic purpose?
Yes, if you've read through the legislation, it's to just be informational for people, and the reason they chose the prospective students, parents, and the public one was to make it.
Well, it seems like to me that people are either looking for an associate degree or a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree. It's 3 categories. I mean, it seems like to me putting them all together in one group, graduate and undergraduate, doesn't really help a person. If they're looking for a graduate school, they want to have graduate school information.
How many of you only offer graduate degrees?
Well, and we're only graduate.
Yeah.
We also master degree and bachelor.
Because that can be a group. Institutions that offer only graduate degrees. So from the information I had, I didn't really know enough to. So which institutions are the ones?
Tulane and Oriental Medicine, and behind you, Oriental Medicine.
So Tulane, Oriental Medicine, and Chinese.
And Texas College of Traditional Chinese Medicine.
Said only.
Those 3?
Said only.
Only.
Only graduate degrees.
Got it. No, that would not include us.
What
We offer a Bachelor of Science degree also in conjunction with the master's
Right.
degree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The students, after they got a master degree, in the same time they receive 1 bachelor degree.
Yes,
Yeah.
so you offer bachelor degree.
Yeah.
We are talking about master and above only.
Yeah.
What's different for this meeting, in the
No,
future?
everybody's at the meeting.
No,
It's just the
okay.
groupings that we're talking about.
Right.
And it seems to me, I gather we may have another comment coming in. It's already like 1:45. Because of the limited time for this meeting, I'm going to suggest that unless somebody can offer a suggestion on the groupings that we can all agree with pretty quickly, that we then table this for now, and Gabriella and I will look at it and give some more thought to it, and you can send in your ideas to us on what you would suggest. We personally would lean towards having some breakouts of groups because we think that gives more meaningful data, but if we can't come up with something that works for everybody here and that, is a consensus, then we're going to have to, figure out. But we don't have enough time to perhaps, because there's nothing obvious that seems to be coming out of this. I'm going to suggest that we move on to the next topic right after Fred's comment.
I just want to mention about the third group. The institutions that are mainly online with some type of internship in Texas. I don't know if except beside Capella somebody else is listening or is here, but I appreciate suggestions if they should be separate or should be integrated together with the other institutions and in which groups.
Well, actually, I have a comment from the University of Florida, Dr. Norman. He suggests graduate and professional degrees.
Yeah.
He says he likes the idea of suggestion of the groupings, and his suggestion was graduate degrees. Graduate and professional degrees is what he said.
Yeah.
Also, there was another mention about the University of Florida, and he had the same question. There's a lot of, like University of Florida has 50,000 students. The College of Pharmacy, which is one of the ones here in Texas, has 2,000, but the working professional pharmacy has 550, and only 42 are in Texas. So it's kind of one of those things where you go from 50,000 to 42. So
Yeah, it clearly wouldn't be
questions
50,000 for Texas. So we'll give a little more thought to this topic. We knew it would be a little bit difficult to try to figure out what kind of groupings with such a diverse listing of institutions. So we'll try to come up with something else. But I'm going to suggest, unless somebody wants to offer another comment, which you're welcome to do, I'm going to suggest that we move on to the draft of the accountability system. This is going to be the same for all the groups, so it won't, this part of the conversation won't matter which of the groups you're in. So we'll just,
One final comment, if I could make, supporting Jim's idea. Like, if we look at the bachelor's degree institutions, there are only about 12 schools there. So it may not be necessary to divide them into subgroups.
okay.
So schools with bachelor's, schools with graduate studies, I think based on those, there might be a grouping. That's my idea.
Okay. And as I said, any ideas you want to send in to us by email after this meeting? We're always going to review everything you have to say. Okay, so we'll start with the draft of the accountability system. I went through the university's accountability system and picked out things that I thought were probably applicable to you and things that I felt like the legislators were probably interested in when they enacted this bill. We have worked with them quite a bit on the public institutions accountability system, so we have a feel for what they're interested in. And in this case, we're going to start with a fall head count. As I mentioned before, for the two-year institutions, we said we'd pull everybody they reported as being enrolled in September, October. Doesn't match exactly the October 15th date that IPEDS uses, but it might be pretty close. We only get reportings from you by month, so we can't break it down to a specific day. So we would use for a fall head count all those students who are enrolled in September and October, or October. Now, does that sound reasonable to you?
Or do you have other suggestions how we can separate the fall students from what we have from you? We don't want to add reporting.
Yeah, that's one of the things we should have mentioned is we're trying to do all this within your current reporting to us and what you report to IPEDS. So we've picked out only those things that we can we either know you report to us or we can find in the IPEDS system.
Unless there are those universities who don't report separately for IPEDS, but I think we'll need to talk with them separately, how to deal with the situation. And I suggest you have a handout with the definitions. I think it will be helpful if you look at them in parallel so you have a feel how the particular measure is defined. Also for a fall head count, and there are other measures like annual enrollment. Yesterday, it was suggested that the age groupings is not reflecting the student population that at least they have. So they wanted that group over 35 to be 35 to 40, 39, 40 to 49. So more grouping for the adult students that reflect student population. Do you want the same thing? So it goes from up to 64, and then it will be 64 and over.
So the students at your institutions, are they mostly young students or are they mostly older students?
Working adults.
This is probably a good place to jump in for me. I see a lot of schools here whose students are primarily adult students returning to complete their educations. So every time I see a list with first-time, full-time enrolled in 12 hours, it never works for us. Our students are adults.
We'll discuss those things as we go along, but yeah.
So the age grouping is.
Okay, so the reason that the two-year institutions were interested in more breakouts was because they too felt their students tended to be older. And so as Gabriela mentioned, they suggested, in addition to what's there now, rather than just saying over 35 and over, that we do 35 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 64, and then over 64. Now, for us, in many ways, it's not necessary that you match exactly what the two-year career schools suggested, but it certainly would be, it makes some sense to to try to have similarities. So do those breakouts seem sufficient for you if we add in what we've done for the two-year career schools?
Yeah.
So you're just going to add those to the list, because we need
Yeah.
the less than 18, the 18
Oh
to
yeah,
20.
no, it will
So
be
you'd be adding those
FUC.
to that.
Where
Yeah.
it says over 35 there, which really should read 35 and over, we would add the ones I just mentioned. 4 categories, really. That sound okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so for those online, the consensus of the group seems to be they'd like the age groups to be the same as what the two-year institution suggested.
And talking about the 12 hours that you mentioned, you don't report hours to us, so
okay,
we'll need to discuss.
Okay, and the next thing we need to discuss at this point is the ethnic breakout, or race and ethnicity breakout. Are all of you going to be reporting this time to IPEDS using the new federal 2-part question? Okay. This thing that's on the board does have those breakouts, and I will explain to you how we do them and how we run them here, just so you'll know. When we look at the 2-part question, we actually first take out anybody who's international, and so they're listed as a separate item. And then we take out those who answered yes to the first question, which is, are you Hispanic or not? If they answered yes, we put them in the Hispanic category regardless of what they reported as their race. Then we look at those students who reported only one race, and that would be white, African American, Asian, which also includes Pacific Islander, Native American and Alaskan Native are in the other category for us because they're such small numbers. And other also includes everybody who's unknown ethnicity or race. And it includes everybody who reported more than one race, of which one of the races they reported was an African American. You can see the third category down there says multiracial, one of which is African American. The reason we did that was because the public institutions were very concerned that their African American numbers might decline based on the new reporting. And so, just like President Obama, people say he's black or African American. If he were reporting in the new 2-part category, would be half white, half black. And so that's the kind of thing that the public institutions were worried about. So that's why we broke that group out. When we discussed this yesterday with the 2-year institutions, they thought these groupings were fine for them. But we need to know whether these are fine for you as well.
So Native Americans are in the other category?
They're in the other category, yes.
I have a question on the definition of international. A student who finishes high school overseas, but is later on become an American, green card holder, does not need visa, still international.
No.
What do you mean? Is it a visa status?
Yes.
So people...
Who are on a visa, of an international student visa.
Student visa. Okay.
So if they are Texas residents or whatever other state residents, they are no longer international.
Even if they finished high school.
It doesn't matter
Okay,
where
this
they
is
finish
about
high school.
visa and it's okay.
Anybody else have some comments on this? You're going to be getting some kind of message from us saying you'll need to be changing your reporting to us to match these new categories, and that hasn't happened yet, but you should be getting that shortly.
But again, this is what we report through IPEDS.
Yes.
Okay. I want to minimize having to do 2 sets of work if possible.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's good. All right.
I think I want to mention something that came up yesterday. When we ask for enrollment, it's just students from Texas. So yesterday, the issue came up because some schools said, well, we have students from other states. We are interested just students that you enroll in Texas, wherever you are located.
Now, if
So
you're-
I want
if
to
you're
make it clear.
If your student is from another state, but they've come here to go to school with you, those would be counted too.
But if they are physically in another state, belong to other state,
Taking online.
taking online courses from here, you don't report them to us.
So, any questions about that? Good. Gender, I assume everybody's fine with the gender breakout there? And the next group, measure number 2, is annual unduplicated enrollment. This would be the total number of students that you report to us within the September through August 31st time period for each year. And once again, the age groups are there, and we break them out in the same way that we did for the first item. Okay, any comments about that? Okay. The item number 3, which is called service area representation, this is a measure that we have for the universities to give an idea of how well their enrollment matches either the state's enrollment or the enrollment of students from the area that they're from. We didn't know if you would like this kind of measure or not. I think the two-year institutions, when we had a discussion with them in December, thought that this was interesting information because they felt they did represent the areas that they were from. But we don't know if it applies to you. So we'd like to hear a little bit of discussion from you on whether a measure like this makes any sense for you. Now,
Just a little bit of background, the public universities, for this measure, they don't have a service area like the community colleges. So the service area is the state. The comparison there is with the high school graduates. So that's why we don't know if it makes sense for you.
And since most of your students are older than recent high school graduates, comparing with high school graduates may not be useful for you. Do you feel like you try to represent your region or that you are a regional institution, or do you feel like your enrollments come from a much broader area?
What is that heading?
HE is higher education region. We have 10 higher education regions, and that was just one of the ways we could come up with a service area, so to speak, for you. Now, yesterday when we discussed it with the two-year institutions, they really didn't want anything as broad as the higher ed regions, only 10 of them, and Texas is a huge state. They wanted more the MSA or the counties that they were in, but they decided that they did want to keep this measure. It may not make any sense for your institutions.
I would think it would make no sense for our institution.
Okay.
And in our case, it would make sense for our institution with the traditional population that we have. Again, we would want the information much like the ICUT institutions and the four-year public institutions.
Okay.
We would want that as well.
Okay. And since we're going to use the same measures for all of you, we have to come up with a consensus from the group. So.
Sounds like I might lose that vote, though, on a majority, though, so.
Yeah.
And understandable.
Actually, it's just a duplication of the earlier information also, though, is it not, if there's no special breakdown by HE region or any other region or county?
Well, we wouldn't, if we didn't break it down by a region or something, we wouldn't keep the measure because that's what the purpose of the measure is. So we just need some.
I mean, for an institution that does not necessarily need the data, but for an institution which does, this 3 data is not different from 2 or 1 data with respect to race, ethnicity, and gender, is it?
Now, this compares the breakout of the population of the area you decide with the other, with your student population breakout.
But the ethnicity will be the same.
And the gender would be the same.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's
For
the first
your
column that's
institution,
different.
but-
So,
But that could be broken by region. So for example, as we're looking at adding housing, we're going to look at how effectively we're recruiting in El Paso, San Antonio, et cetera,
Yeah, okay.
places what would need residential as opposed to we're in Dallas. That might be more of a commuter market for us. So that would be very beneficial to us as we look at traditional residential housing opportunities and those things. How were we matching up, how effectively maybe we're finding that El Paso, for example, we're not very effective recruiting in a certain demographic, and then you explore that for what reasons.
okay, how about some of the others? Somebody?
We do have a comment from
Yeah.
Capella. The statement, I guess, is this will not apply to us since we are online and located in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Would we be allowed to enter NA to questions? that
We
don't
would do
pertain to
that
us?
for you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that our students come from all over the U.S. and even abroad, more than half of them from outside of Texas. So how would many of them move to Austin to come and study here. So
probably it doesn't make sense for this group.
Is there
the
any
same, right?
consensus
Except
from the group? Now, one thing we do in the public institutions accountability system, we have what we call contextual boxes under each of the measures where the institution personnel can type in information about the institution that would give some more context for what's being reported in a measure. We could certainly have those same boxes for you and say under some part of it, you could make some comment about the kinds of students you have. So, but aside from Northwood, any other comments?
If I can just maybe add, it may make sense if this information's accessible through your website, that if someone so chooses to make comparisons for their own internal purposes, that it would still be available. So it may not make sense as a whole for a group to have that as a comparison, but still accessible.
Mm-hmm. You guys, any?
I was just going to say, my students, we've got a fairly healthy international population, about 15%. Come from about 20 different countries. But when you look at the rest of the student population, it's probably, I would say 90% of them, maybe a little higher, come from within 30 miles radius of the campus.
Mm-hmm.
So that, comparing it to a higher ed region is not going to be an apples and oranges comparison.
Uh-huh. Anybody else have a comment they want to make on this? Okay.
So,
Well, yeah.
are we keeping it or not?
Yeah. For some, it doesn't make sense. For some, it makes.
I certainly understand from a group perspective. No, you wouldn't. I mean, if I was part of my opportunity here is to try and illustrate what I commented on when I first got here, what our opportunities are. Very respectful of the other institutions but no, I don't. For a group, you wouldn't keep that. I don't know why you would.
Okay. So we're going to say that we won't report this measure for you guys. But I should mention that outside of this whole process of accountability and online resumes, we do run a lot of data for people who ask, and certainly any of you are welcome to request some data from us. We have to work it in within our regular reporting cycles, and so it may take a while for us to get back with you. But if there are things that you're interested in that maybe we could help with, always feel free to let us know what kind of questions you do have.
And don't forget, you report to us in the student level, so we can track the students if you need that. So we do that too.
Okay. So now moving on to a couple of measures that we would get from OPEDS. The first one is the FTE enrollment for an institution. We report that for universities Partly because we do a lot of our calculations by dividing by FTE so that there can be some way of knowing what that FTE number is that we're using. But it does give an indication of how many students are really going full-time as opposed to part-time. So the difference between your enrollment in the fall and your FTE count gives a flavor for how many your students are full-time.
And as you don't report the number of hours to us, the only way is to get it from iPads.
So does this piece of information make sense for your institutions? Okay. From the two-year institutions, they said most of their students are full-time anyway, so this number would be quite close to probably what you report for enrollment.
We don't have that for the 2 year.
Oh, okay. But
I think we need to report how many students for full-time or part-time. It's very, very important because we understand most people, they are private school. We're talking about the gainful employment. We encourage students to be a full-time. That means they can be graduate the school on time and pay back financial aid.
Yeah.
Yeah, like old school, we are 92% students, they are full-time students. 17 credit above, right?
we're not totally or very familiar even with what you report to iPads. I do have some documents here that I can consult with, but do you report the number of full-time students and the number of part-time students to iPads?
Yes, they do. Yes,
okay.
they do.
So would that make more sense than using FTSEs or not? Do most of your students go full-time? At least part of your institutions?
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh. So do you think of full-time,
well,
part-time?
part of the things with the iPads, what breaks out also is, in our case with athletics, you get into gender equity opportunities, et cetera. So that's why they want to know how many are full-time, specifically how many are part-time. They're looking at bodies as opposed to a cumulative total. So that's why they'll break out all the different areas and then look at financial aid the same way. And then that goes to the Department of Education as well.
Right.
But that may not apply here,
Yeah.
that much detail.
Yeah, that's why we need your input, because we don't really know that much about your institutions. So any thoughts whether instead of this FTSE, full-time, part-time would be a better breakout?
For the public institutions, we have FTE and we have enrollment by full-time and part-time. So for them, we have all of these. For you, it's whatever you...
I'm a parent. Look, I'm not sure I'm going to understand what FTSE
Okay,
means.
okay.
Full-time, part-time, I understand.
Okay, that's a good point. Well,
But from our institution, University of Phoenix, all of our students are full-time, so a part-time designation doesn't really matter to us.
Okay. Okay. As much as possible, we're trying to figure out what it is we think that the legislators were interested in knowing when they passed this bill. And so, you know, it's divining what they were thinking. But we know that we need some information. We need some meat in this accountability system. Otherwise, what they could do when they come back next time is say, hey, that's not got what we really wanted. We want you to report this and this and this and this and this. So what we're hoping to head off that kind of necessity on their part by figuring out what it is that they might be interested in and having enough measures that it looks like a genuine system. So.
Well, and that Pell portion would certainly have been tied to some of the scholarships, the TEG, and some of those you have to be Pell eligible to start with, and then dollars can range from that minimum to the maximum as well. So some of those breakouts were certainly important, and as they were going through those bills, that Pell eligibility and TEG, TEOG, those scholarships remaining or going away were tied to Pell eligibility, and dollars go that way as well.
Because we will get that from iPads, whatever breakout the iPads have, we cannot go beyond
That
it.
would seem to, again, assuming if the legislators were looking at it from that perspective, you'd be providing that same information to them from iPads.
And you will note on the online resumes, we do have, I think, 3 categories of, if I can figure out where I put mine, of information on financial aid. So I think it's in the, too many pieces of paper. Thank you very much. On the online resume, it's in the top right-hand category, and we have grants or scholarship aid, then Pell Grants is a subset of that, and then federal student loans. Those are the categories that we're required to do for public institutions, and so we use those same ones for you, and they're to be pulled from iPads. So would you like this to be expanded beyond just the Pell Grant to the other 3 categories? The other 2 categories? Yeah.
So right now, you're proposing just the Pell Grant?
Yes, uh-huh.
Personally, I think it's adequate.
Okay. The comment was that he thinks this is adequate with just the students receiving Pell. Any other comments?
What does it, how do graduate level students factor in that for that if they're only reporting Pell?
Graduate students get Pell.
I mean, if there are other measures that they get in addition to.
They may get it. The part I was looking at on iPads looked like it was just for undergraduate students. Does anybody know for sure?
It's just for undergraduate.
Yeah, because again, that's where your athletic scholarships, private donors, all those other elements come into play at the undergraduate level. Usually, not that there isn't potential graduate level, but the majority of the time it's the undergraduate level.
But since we have to get this from iPads, we need to match what their possibilities for pulling the data are. So, okay, so we seem to be, can I say, consensus that this is fine with just reporting Pell here, and you'll have the other information in the online resume if somebody really wants to look at it. Now we're moving to what we call our success area, and we start with persistence. This is one that we were going to run using the data that you report to us.
So here is that issue of first-time degree-seeking undergraduates. What we were thinking for you is to, first of all, you are supposed to report to us on one element that says first time in college. We really don't know how accurate that is. In the discussion yesterday, we were told that, well, if the student brings in a transcript and we know, we may be more accurate. So I'm not sure if for you it's more likely to know. And if not, we thought to change this with first time at your institution. At your institution. So regardless if they've been in higher ed before, which you may know or not know, if we really want to know if they've been to a public institution before they came to you, we can find out from our records.
Well, the first time at your institution would seem to be a positive, because in many cases, someone who transfers to you, you don't get to count in graduation rates a lot of times because they'll be identified already with another institution, first of all. So from a success perspective, especially with many of the institutions here who may deal with the number of transfers been somewhere else, it would seem you would want that included, because then you would get the graduation rate success tied to your institution, because that's where they graduate from. I know for us, we have the other, so many of the graduation rate things tied to the first college of attendance, and your transfer students,
and
you get credit for them.
And as you can see, we run it, and you'll see at graduation the same thing. Are they persisting or graduate your institution? If not, we'll look for them everywhere in Texas, and you get the credit for them under the other institution heading.
So the possibilities, we have this for a one-year measure and we have a two-year measure. In the two-year measure, we take out students who've actually completed because we wouldn't want to make that, we take it out of the denominator so that it's more accurate. But what we could do in addition to, if you think a first-time measure may be useful for your institution, we could also add a separate measure that says persistence rates of students who entered your institution at a certain time range. So
What do you mean?
Well,
what's the time range?
September, October we have to come up with a cohort in order to be able to follow them. So we would have to decide what's the base.
That would be all students, first time or transfer.
First time
or
at your
whatever.
institution, and then
Yes,
follow
but
them.
this is the fall to fall.
Right.
Fall to second fall.
But it's all students, not just first time students.
Well, we could run it, so the way this currently is for universities, it's the first time in college. And so that means they haven't gone to another institution. But since many of yours maybe have, and you may not know it, or it may have been a long time ago, we could, in addition to this one, or in place of this one, do first time at your institution, and then track them. So we need some input from you on what would be a meaningful measure for you. Persistence is important for the public institutions because obviously you want to keep your students if they haven't succeeded doing what they intended to do when they come. So I think it's a measure that is of interest to legislators.
Well, we track this internally, but wouldn't it kind of mess with the way other states do things if we changed it? I mean, how do you, if you're in Oklahoma and you've always reported first-time degree-seeking undergraduates the way that it's done now, wouldn't that kind of mess with the
If we're going to report a measure that sounds like something that's already out there, we try to change the word so it's clear that it's not the same thing. We try to be as explicit as we can so that there won't be confusion of, oh, I thought this was probably first time full time. So, I mean, we'll do our best, and you will get a chance to improve on our wording when we send our information back out to you. So,
For us, what we can do otherwise is take your word for it, just pick up the students that you coded as first time in college and go with that. Because we ask you to report.
Well, it would seem like with the closing of the gap legislation and the relationship between the two-year institutions and the four-year institutions, at some point the coordinating board, as well as others, are going to want what's the success of graduating from a two-year institution, going to whatever four-year institutions, and then graduating from there. So at some point, they're going to want that.
Yeah.
And that ties back to the first time at your institution then, or our institutions as a transfer student. Now, whether you get it through this or some other measure, but with that closing the gap legislation, some of those other things, that's going to come to the forefront here pretty quick, I would think. And I would think they would want that.
It's already there.
Okay. They're going to want that relationship. Okay, we've got success with the two-year degrees and graduating from there. Now, as they enter whatever four-year institutions they are, what's that next? And right now, that piece is being not necessarily.
and we'll get to that with the next items on our
Because for the publics, we have a special measure that we look at the graduation rate of the transfer students. The students, how many of the students who transfer from community college graduate in 4 years after that. So for them, we have a very specific.
I think we have a couple comments.
Oh, good.
I think we've already
we need
covered.
some comments. Okay, good.
I think we've already covered it for the most part. It's from Capella, and their first comment is that all the items on this section are based on first-time full-time credential-seeking students. For Capella, geared to adult learners, this population is very small, especially at a state level. This really won't compare apples to apples with other institutions.
Right.
So I think we've already talked about that.
Okay, so anybody else have an opinion on whether you'd like to, we need some kind of persistence measure for you.
I have a question. Like old school, the minimum enrollment is 60 semester hours. So if we answer this question, how do we answer that? That means all students enrolled, they are already thinking for degree before. Went to UT Austin or went to any university and study for 2 years. Then they come to our school to study for master's degree. That means our answer supposed to be 0, right? They are not the first time thinking for the degree.
That's why we're discussing first time at your institution.
Right.
So you would probably say first time at your institution would have more meaning. But probably we wouldn't mix and match this. This is an undergraduate measure for the universities. We can discuss whether it makes sense to do something similar for graduate students. We have the data, we can run it, but we just need some input from you on what makes sense for
But
your
in
institutions.
In their case, if they offer the bachelor degree, it will be for your bachelor degree students.
Okay, so not for the graduate students, right?
This is usually not run for graduate
Okay.
students.
Thank you.
But it could be.
First time at our institution is what we would be used to measuring persistence and being able to track the best. And it's very difficult to capture whether or not they attended another institution.
Yeah, and-
Sometimes they have, but they didn't transfer any credits in. They were in a different program.
Right.
And it's hard to see that they've been in school before, so.
And it seems like if the purpose of this is to determine how well you're retaining students, then first time at your institution is the only measure that really makes sense.
Okay. And do you care whether that is first time, full-time, or just first time anybody?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know, so
Okay.
it'll be everybody.
Okay. First time.
Janet, I have one question,
Yeah.
so we make sure we're clear on this. In their current reporting, the definition of first time in college as far as the code in the CBM 001 report is first time in college anywhere out of high school. So if we were to use this other methodology that you're talking about, we're not asking them to change how they report that field on our reports, are we? That's something we would determine based on comparing that student to see if they showed up anywhere? How would we determine that it was the first time at their institution?
They don't report that to us.
Go back and see what they reported the other years and.
Right, okay, so we would, they're not going to change how they report this field, that's all. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Does that seem reasonable if we look back in your prior reporting to us? And we know from having been through this process with the public institutions, even though they've reported to us for a long, long time, after we started reporting these things and everybody started looking at the measures, we found that the reporting improved with time because there was just a lot more attention to the individual measures. So probably the first time round, we won't have a lot of years of past data to go back and look at, but as time goes on, the whole of the process and the values that are reported get more and more accurate as time goes on. So good point, Cliff. And just to let you know, this is Cliff King. He is in the planning and accountability section and deals with our reporting from your institutions.
And just for your information, when we look back looking for students, we usually look 6 years. I don't think we have 6 years for you, so we'll look back only as much as we have at this point. But normally we look 6 years.
Okay. So we'll calculate who goes into that cohort of first time at your institution based on your reporting to us.
And you're going to stick with undergraduates, correct?
Well, I think we shouldn't mix undergraduates and graduates. If there is a swell of desire on the part of everybody here for us to do something similar for graduate students, we can consider running that. Sometimes we have to run measures and just see what it looks like before we know whether it's going to work, but I haven't heard anybody say.
I'm good with that.
I suspect for primarily graduate institutions, persistence through completion of the graduate degree would be helpful data, as long as you made it specific that you're tracking the graduate student category or cohort.
We'll basically capture that in graduation, right?
No, we don't do graduates.
Yeah, we don't do graduates.
Okay, I'll just make a note here. Okay.
What do we do for those no, those are, we don't have.
So
any.
we'll look at that, what we can do for the graduate students, and see if we can come up with something that makes sense. This is a one-year measure. Below it is a two-year measure for persistence. Do you want both of those measures, 1 year and 2 year?
So that's the first fall and the second fall.
And as I said, we take out the students who actually have successfully completed something and haven't returned. Okay?
I think that's useful information, but again, what, is this just data you can mine out of the database
Yes.
yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you see here doesn't require for you extra reporting at all.
Okay.
And when we say other institutions, we'll look for your students not only with career schools, but we'll also look for them in public institutions and in independent institutions. They report to us their students as well. So in Texas. Only in Texas, but we'll look everywhere. Okay? Now.
Okay, I want to specify. We can do that if you report valid Social Security numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, I want that to be very clear. If you don't,
Okay, now, this is the graduation and persistence rate that we run for the universities now. It pretty much mirrors, at least for the same institution, what institutions report to IPEDS and the way it's calculated. So it's for a first-time, full-time cohort of students that are tracked. And I know that, I'm pretty sure that the legislators will want to see some kind of graduation rate. This is graduation and persistence. We have separate, just plain graduation rates by 4, 5, and 6 years. We can consider running any of those for you.
then we'll use the code, so we have only first time in college. The way they code
Yeah,
it.
so now we'll have to figure out what makes sense for you. You know, should we run first time at your institution? Again, like we will do for the persistence rate?
How do you report to iPads the graduation?
First time, full time, and it skews our data.
Yeah,
And so
ours
it's
too.
only first time, full time at your institution, and then, okay.
And
No, first time, full time,
Undergraduate.
anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's for what you know.
Yeah,
For
yes,
the
exactly.
students you know.
Exactly.
The same way you report to us.
We trust that they're saying the right thing on their enrollment agreement about prior college or whatever, whether we get transcripts or not.
Okay.
And another comment
Yes.
agrees with that. It'll be first time, full time is easier to report and track. This is from Kellogg again.
Okay. Okay. Certainly, we can run this measure as is. We could run another one that would be something from just from your institution, first time at your institution, rather than first time in college.
If we're going to go to the first time at your institution for the previous measure, if we're going to go to the first time at your institution for the previous measure, would it not be important to be consistent?
Well, since you report this to IPEDS, I think it probably wouldn't hurt to have this in there, but we could do another measure that would be similar to first time at your institution.
So to have two. And we'll call it not, because when you say graduation rate, usually everybody thinks first-time, full-time students that graduate in whatever years. But we can call them completion rate. And then it will be slightly different, but it will refer to the whole population of your institution first time at your institution.
But that would be information that's not provided right now.
Yes,
That
it-
would be a benefit to all of
Yeah.
our institutions to have that, because iPads doesn't do that. I don't know if anyone's aware of it. That would be a benefit.
Well,
They report it.
we like to think there's going to be something that's a benefit
I'm
on all
not
this
saying there would be
process.
more, I'm just highlighting that as one.
Yeah, I'm glad we found one.
And let's face it, completion of degrees would be one that the press and others would play off as well. I mean, that's, in the end, that's what's come down to, who's completing degrees and how many, so.
And the same time frames like this, 4, 5, and 6 years, right? The way we usually track students back in time is we look this many years that we decide and we'll have the methodology in the definition. And it's when we find them first time during that period. So if the student comes in, stops for a while, comes back, then if we find him 3 different times, we look the earliest. And if the student appears, let's say, last year, but stopped for 5 years, so outside our period, we wouldn't know that. So there are some limitations in a way. But we'll try to look the first time when we find the student.
Yeah, and for all these measures, there's going to be the limitation of when you first started reporting certain information to us. We, in terms of the number of years that we can report in each of them, it'll matter when you first started reporting that measure, and also what's in iPads for those iPads measures. So. Okay. Degrees awarded, I'm hoping this one won't be too controversial, since you're probably similar to what you're reporting now, but we'll do this again based on the data that you report to us. Degrees awarded by ethnicity, by level, and by gender. Anybody see anything that needs to be changed for your institutions? Okay.
And this is a duplicated measure. So if a student gets a certificate in the bachelor, for example,
Or a bachelor's and a master's.
or a bachelor in the same year, that would be counted in both. In graduation rate, we usually put them in the highest level earned, because a student is a student.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a comment from DeVry University's Stephen Hayworth. He says we would be in favor of having 2 persistent and grad rate measures, one for the first time to college, like the publics are doing, and one for all new students, cohort of first time and new transfers combined.
At their institution. Okay.
That's what we were talking about.
Good, I think that's what we had said, so thanks for that comment.
Jeanette,
Yes.
one other thing, because I heard somebody mention it, we currently do not collect professional degrees. We only associate, certificate, baccalaureate, master's, and doctoral. So
We can add another
we could
code.
add it, but I just wanted to because you had it up there on the.
Yeah, we will need to add that then, okay?
So it won't be a new measure, it will be just a new code.
Within
in an element that you already. I assume you want the professional, right? Added?
Yes. What's professional?
Lawyers,
Lawyers,
doctors,
okay.
pharmacy.
Yeah, okay.
Now it's not called professional, well, it is called doctoral professional practice by iPads now. In closing the gaps, we have a number of things called critical fields. These are areas where, when Closing the Gaps was started, they thought we needed more graduates, and they wanted to put emphasis on that so that everybody would be very aware of what's happening. One of the areas are the STEM fields, and because we had lots of students graduating already in biology, they didn't include CIP Code 25 for biology in these STEM fields. So you see computer science, engineering, math, and physical science are the areas. We don't know if you will want to be able to report in accountability on any of the critical fields. The other ones, as you'll see as we go down, are allied health and nursing, and then teaching. So we can mix and match. If you want to keep some of these critical fields, you could. If you don't want to keep any of them, that's okay. So we don't know where what your students are graduating in, so we didn't know how meaningful these would be for you.
And if you look in the definitions, you can see the zip codes that are included in your handouts. They are very specific in closing the gaps. Only these ones are there.
So any comments from anybody on whether you'd like to keep the degrees awarded in STEM fields?
I'm going to have mostly zeros.
Yeah. Well, honestly, some of the universities have zeros in most of the areas too. Maybe not computer science, but they have lots of zeros. So
I don't know how meaningful this particular measure is for us.
Now, the two-year institutions, of course, with ones like ITT, this was a measure they saw as being very important for them because they were contributing. So if any of your institutions are contributing in these areas, I think as a group we probably want to keep it just to show what you're doing.
Is like math teachers or physical science teachers will be included in this part or not?
It's based on the zip code that you report.
And so if you're saying your math teachers major in 27, I think it is, or 13, which is the education code, public institutions, in order to graduate with an education degree, you have to have your major not in education. You have to have it in another field. And so for public institutions, anybody who wanted to teach math would be in that math code because that's what they have to graduate in. But it's that state legislation doesn't hold for your institutions. So you may be putting your math teachers out with a degree in Area 13, CIP Code 13, which is education. Then they wouldn't be counted here. Is that clear?
Yeah.
But they will be if you keep the teachers' measures.
So yeah, we'll get down to them if you want to keep it.
I remember
So-
for the closing the gap, there's a specific measurement for math and science teachers
Yes, there
certification,
is, and it's
but
down,
I didn't
it's
see
coming
it
up.
here.
Oh, yeah, we probably
further.
don't have the math and science broken out in that way, but yes, you're right, we do have that in closing the gaps. Anybody?
One question?
Yes.
We had a question. The question is, would a specialist degree be considered a professional degree? They have a EDS. I'm not sure about that one.
I don't know what an EDS is, but
don't think
we do
so.
have a specialist.
Specialist in education.
Yeah, we
No,
have
I
a
don't think
specialist
so. It's
degree that's kind of between master's and doctoral, and
Yeah.
we usually count them with master's degrees. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, and I would think maybe DeVry, who did write in, do they have any engineering degrees, do you know, or?
They should have.
Yeah, I thought they did. So maybe we'll leave this in for now, and if there's no information that's being reported in there for any of the institutions, then we can consider removing it at a later date.
And you can comment in the box that we don't offer those majors.
Yeah. How about nursing and allied health? And allied health, once again, you should look at the definitions because it tells you exactly which CIP codes we're including in allied health.
A lot of CIP codes.
Yeah. Do any of you offer nursing?
We're getting ready to.
Are you? Well, okay.
Business.
So maybe it's one,
This.
you guys want to make a comment?
No, but
Oh, they look like they're getting in trouble down there, don't they?
we're a business school and there's no criticality.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, we do have plenty of business majors, and they're doing a fine job with our economy, right? just a little sad joke. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well.
So are we keeping these two measures?
Maybe we'll leave this like the STEM one, where we can see what the whole of the group, not just those of you who are represented here, but how everybody's doing in those measured areas. So, okay, now for teaching. So this is a measure that we get not from our data, but we get it from SBEC, which is the State Board for Educator Certification, and we look and see for each institution what's reported for them. So you would have some students reported?
Yeah, actually, we have two different programs. One is undergraduate education program with SBEC certification, and we also have an alternative teacher certification program.
And they're included in here as well. So, yeah, those.
Also, for this part, we will be happy to see the math and science teachers, physical science teachers will be separate data.
Okay,
because
yeah, I think
those are the critical area.
Yeah, we've never broken that out for the publics, but I do know it is in Closing the Gaps, you're right. So I will.
Just a suggestion, not necessarily.
Yes.
Is there a reason why it's just teachers and not administrators? For example, the principal superintendent certification program.
When Closing the Gaps started, they did a lot of investigation of where the real holes were in the public education system, and they thought there were plenty of people who were certified to be principals and other things in schools. Like, you don't see counselors in there either. What they decided was they really needed teachers in the classrooms. So that's the way it is now.
Okay.
And just to let you know, if we do keep this measure, if we add the math science, the one above it for teachers is first-time certification. So if a teacher already is certified in many areas, they're not going to be counted in the first initial certification. But for the math science teacher measure, anybody who gets a certification in a math science field is counted. So it's a not quite comparable measure. It's not a per person measure. Okay.
This measure looks at undergraduate.
What it is for this.
This measure tracks the graduate of a program after graduation. So the tracking is done in any other institution or your institution. So if they continue school in graduate program or whatever, and in employment. So as you can see, is separated if they go to work and school, or just are enrolled. Usually for universities, we consider them only if they enroll in a graduate program, because some of them may go back to community college to get something. They are not included in that, still enrolled. So I'm not sure how would you like it to be for you. For the employment, we look in the UI wage records and some federal databases, and that's how we get the employment.
And this is limited to students who are in state schools? Or in Texas institutions?
What happens right now for the public institutions is we get from the Texas Workforce Commission the UI wage records. And so we look at everybody who graduated from whatever institution it is we're tracking and see if we find them anywhere. We look at, are they in graduate school for the public universities, but that could be a graduate school at another Texas public institution or at an independent college in Texas.
But all within the state?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have the clearinghouse data. We'd love to have that. It probably wouldn't come in time for us to really run a lot of our measures, but we could, add it in over time. But no, this is just in everything we have basically available to us, with the exception of the military records and the Office of Personnel Management at the federal level. Those are the only things that are outside of Texas that we can track.
And
Does that include employment as well?
employment in Texas.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and then with the Federal Office of Personnel Management.
We don't
Oh, we
have
don't get
them.
that for them?
No, because we don't create.
So it's both enrollment and employment in Texas.
Yes.
Is all we're
Yes.
reporting now.
Yes.
We have a question I think kind of follows. Would this include graduates who get licensed in another state and then take the Texas exam? This is talking about teacher certification.
This is not about licensure or certification, this
No,
measure.
okay. Right, okay.
It's about getting a job in Texas. We'll talk about licensure later.
24 and 25, I understand, but 23, that looks like it's
It's
a
a
little
s-
more all-encompassing. So, again, if you have a large international population, I know when we do our placement statistics, we are allowed to waive those people because they're going back home to work. So I take them out of, if I have 100 students graduate, 20 of them are international, I'm starting with 80 instead of 100.
First of all, I assume they don't have a valid social security number. So we remove everybody who doesn't have a valid social security number. And quite frankly, even if it's a Texas resident and you did not report a valid one, we cannot track them. So we don't want to penalize you. We remove them from the cohort.
And so the first one means that when they graduate, we look at their, October, November, December?
It's the fourth quarter of the year, so it's sort of like 6 months. And for the December graduation would be a year, but that's a methodology that is used by Texas Workforce Commission and Department of Labor. So it's just a snapshot in time.
I have a quick question. So at University of Phoenix, most of our students are already employed, so they're already captured under this, and when they graduate, they would continue employment. So
you'll have 90% or 100%. We are not looking before and after. We'll look after they graduate, do they have a job or not?
And we have considered doing some other things, but not for accountability system, but to try to see, were they employed before? And what were their wages before? And then did it change after they graduated and got another degree? But we haven't put those things in accountability.
that's more of a degree justification from a salary standpoint then?
Well, just to see if it helped. And we know this is a difficult time for salaries to go up for anybody, even if you're doing a great job. So we haven't really, we kind of downplayed that.
However, we created another follow-up report. We called it exit report. I don't know how many of you got my email about it. We are in the process of making the link available to find. Right now, it's there somewhere. I put it in my email, but so we have it for the state, for all of you together, and independently for each institution, where we look at graduates, people who leave your institutions without graduating, if they get jobs, and how much money they make. And this by level of degree, and also by a CIP code. So in each CIP code, how much money they make, how many of them are employed in the fourth quarter. So that would be available soon, when we'll have the link.
So will they be in the drop-down then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll give them their own drop-down.
They will have their own, so just go to university. And if you go to the display all cohorts,
Go ahead and pick that one.
see, you have a separate report for undergraduates. We call them completers because it sounds funny, graduates, or undergraduates, graduates. But those are the graduates of the undergraduate program, graduate programs, and leavers are the ones who leave without a degree. And then the information basically
Make it larger for those online.
I don't know, they just change our thing.
Yeah, it's a plus, yeah.
Do you put the percentage of responses in there? I mean, this is.
This is not a response. We match it with UI wage records. So nobody responds to it. We look for it.
You match it with what?
With the unemployment insurance wage records.
So the Texas Workforce Commission gets information on everybody who's working in Texas for a firm that's over 25 employees. And so all of us who are Texans and working would be in that database.
I understand that, but everyone who leaves the state or goes to the military, you lose completely all that data.
The thing is, for public, we are matching with the DoD database, but you need to have a federal reason to do that, and we don't have a federal reason for you.
Well, that's what I mean. This is very partial data you're using.
For the publics, at least, we find, if you look at these reports, about 75%. So we are talking about 25% that we don't find either enrolled or employed. So
we understand the limitations, but that we try to make that clear with our information. That's Texas is all we have information on, but we hear that this is much more than most states are able to do in terms of information on salaries for people who graduate and what they're up to.
And even for your type of schools, I'm running that report for TWC every year. We are pretty similar in the number of students that I find, the percentage of students that I find. Now, for a specific institution, I don't really know. This year was the first time when we ran, and I didn't look at each individual institution. But for all of you together, about 75% we find in the state.
And how many of you do actually report or have any relationship with TWC? Do any of you?
Yeah, we do.
I mean, you report to them also?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because
They
I
have
know
to be
there are
employed
some.
in their field, not just employed.
Right. Right. And we don't, with the information we get from TWC and even the information they get, they can't tell.
Salary data?
Yes.
Yes.
Quarterly.
That's what I wanted to show you, that in this report you'll have salaries that they earn after they graduate or after they leave your institution. So.
See, what we've found has driven a lot of this is that traditional population, 18 to 24, whatever, families, parents. Those are the ones in the recruiting process are asking, what's your job placement, what types of jobs, et cetera. With our non-traditional adult learners, we seldom field that because, again, many times they're coming already employed. Doesn't mean they're not looking to maybe change to another business or whatever, but they're coming in careers already. But that data that's going public now, we find that the traditional, they're asking for that all the time. Parents and families, what are your placement rates, what kind of salaries, et cetera.
Is there any way to define this number 14? We're still on number 14.
Yeah.
Right.
Any way to footnote it or?
If you look in the definitions, we have definitions for each one of them, and in accountability system, we didn't have a chance to show you, but when you go over the title of the measure, the definition pops up. So
I thought it was interesting that we may be missing quite a few people that are employed in companies that are smaller than 25 that don't report. You know, that's just
See,
part of that data that you have. So
for the community college technical students, so very limited for public also, we send them the name of the students we don't find, and they call the students and whatever, and then report back to us.
And we add them back.
And we
into
add
that.
them. But for universities, we don't do that. And they are not really willing to report that to us. And it's difficult because that's an additional burden for reporting.
So just to let you know about the definitions, when you're in the accountability system that's out there right now, and we'll do the same way for yours, if you put your cursor over the item, it gives you a drop down that gives you the complete definition. So what we found is we wanted people to know what the definitions really were, but to try to put the whole thing there was too much.
Sure.
And so we've done this as an alternative to help explain what they mean.
And the definitions are posted also there somewhere where you can open them in PDF.
Yeah, just to show you where that is. If you go to measures and definitions, and then you've got a way to get to all the definitions at one point in time.
Okay.
And yours will be there too.
And when we read that resume about the levers, does public read it as, do they know it's transfers?
We have no, I mean, some of them are transfers. We have definitions for them too. There is a document.
Yeah, I mean, levers.
Levers is a little more positive.
They left your institution. Either they left because they left or they left to transfer to another institution.
We didn't say abandoners.
Yeah.
No good.
It sounds nice, levers, right? Oh, there are definitions for every items in these reports somewhere.
Okay, so back to this measure then, where we say enrolled in a graduate or professional school in Texas. We want to leave that part of the definition for you, because this is about your baccalaureate graduation rate. If you have, bachelor students, okay?
Janet, is it just going to be for baccalaureate, or are you going to look at other, because some of these institutions have certificates, associates, and graduate?
Yeah, well,
Some-
because it's mostly 4-year and above, we could consider looking for graduates who are employed, but, it gets complicated, and that information is available to you on that other site that I showed you. Okay, now
And that number 25 is both. They're employed somewhere and they're going to graduate school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We can add on if we find them enrolled somewhere. So the ones who are in associate degrees and are enrolled also in an undergraduate program, and then it will be more like a balance. So everybody will be covered if you think you would want that.
So I'll put that there, and if everybody says, yeah, we want that, we'll run it for you.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, we've got just an hour left if we only take up the time that we've allotted, or you've allotted for us. So, but we're making good progress. And, we have excellence as one of the goals for closing the gaps, but we find it very hard to measure. And not doing very well with this little mouse. So we always are trying to figure out what we could do that would really measure excellence, short of the things that the legislature really wants, like learning outcomes. So we've suggested that 2 possibilities or 3 possibilities for you are the student-faculty ratio, your institution, whether some of your students take exams, national exams, or licensure exams that you'd like to report. For the public institutions, universities, we have law, nursing, pharmacy, a couple of other things that we report. But we don't know if that makes sense for you, or if any of your graduates are taking licensure or certification exams. And since we need something in this category, we also put faculty salaries as a possibility. But
we can put, for the 2 years, we have a licensure pass rate. But for that measure, the institutions are entering the programs with the pass rate, because we don't really know. So it will be self-reported by you if you have those kind of things.
For our institution, there would be almost nothing there.
Okay.
Likewise, we don't have anything instituted now to track that information.
Okay. We were kind of thinking that might be the case. How about the student-faculty ratio? That make any sense for your institutions or not?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. That's good, because we need at least one thing, or maybe two, in the excellence section. Any other ideas of things that we could report that might look like excellence for your institutions?
Just to make an observation, I know we're not down to faculty salaries yet, though, but I don't think that really says anything about excellence in our sector.
Okay.
They don't have ranks either, or any of that kind of thing.
Okay.
or tenure, or-
Okay, is that the consensus of the group? Okay, so we'll move this or remove this. Any suggestion on what we might want to replace it with?
We would like the exams. I think as more programs come about, that students who are in higher education graduate programs, taking national exams, counseling and teacher exams and things like that, is probably a better measure than definitely looking at faculty salaries or even ratios.
That would also be true of acupuncture and oriental medicine programs at the graduate level.
Okay.
So we can put that is similar with the 2-year, like a licensure/certification pass rate, but it's up to you to enter the information.
What we might do, because most people, I think, said that it wasn't applicable for their institutions, we could do a box there where you can enter that information.
Would be good.
Now, this link to gainful employment information was something that I thought about for the 2-year institutions. I don't know if you guys are posting gainful employment information online. Are you all familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, okay. I figured you would be. I didn't want to hear you say no, but.
There are new outcomes that we're posting
Okay.
as of July 1st,
Yeah, okay.
I have a
Good for you.
suggestion
Yeah,
on
excellent.
excellence. Perhaps there's professional affiliations or professional accreditation certifications that each institution can designate there. So those are business schools, programmatic things.
That makes sense.
But again, you enter that.
Okay, so we'll have to just put a box there or something, and you guys can enter that.
So it'll be something like you put the name of the program and the accrediting body.
Okay, great idea. Okay, how about, you want to keep a link to gainful employment or think about doing that? Or, I know on a lot of sites it's going to be, there would be so many links because you do it by program. I don't know if this would have any meaning for you or not. Any ideas?
If I clicked on that link, it would take the student or parent to my website where my,
Right,
I don't see any harm in it, it's there. Saves them some clicks.
okay, okay. Yeah, I think the more things you can do that look like you're trying to be transparent and,
If it's possible for the link is institution should choose either link it or not. Like for example, it's not applicable to our institution. So if there's a link there and parents click on it and it goes nowhere,
well.
that's not a good either.
Yeah, we'll put the box, we'll put a box there and you can say not applicable.
Make his come to my institute.
Yeah. Okay.
One question we have here.
Yes.
It's about number 16. I think we talked. We don't have any way to track state and national exam success. I'm assuming we could use NAA as our response to this as well. Is that correct?
Right, and we've basically taken them out and just said we will do a box, and if you don't put anything in the box, you don't have any information, so.
You can enter that you don't have.
Yeah. I left research here because it is one of the Closing the Gaps goals. Is it meaningful to any of you?
Not to us.
Okay, consensus, not meaningful? So I'll get rid of that.
I'm not sure how to approach this one, so the question is from DeVry is linking to gainful employment our info is program-specific and for the school system-wide, not Texas-specific.
Oh, uh-huh.
Well, with DeVry, we need to discuss anyway because in the end, we cannot get their information from iPads at this point. So probably we'll need to find a way for them to give us information for a lot of measures here.
Okay.
And the gainful employment is also by your OPE ID number, which can be groups of schools as well.
But
So-
they are just one national, I think. That's the problem.
You took out the research
Yes.
area altogether,
Yes. But
but the bill's very specific saying they want that.
the bill is?
Says the amount of federal and private research expenditures per tenured or tenured track professor. Second page, number 8.
Usually, they don't really ask if it doesn't pertain to you. Like
Oh,
2
it-
years institution, they don't have
I don't care
research.
whether it's in there or not, but it's specified in the bill.
It also specifies tenured and tenured track. I don't know how many institutions here have tenured or tenured track.
So you're looking at the whole bill or just what I sent out to you?
I'm looking at the whole bill, I think. The first thing you sent. Thing you sent a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Second page,
Yeah.
halfway down, it just says it. That is a requirement of the bill. And it's number 2, and it's Princess number 8.
Okay. We'll look at
Michael,
that.
what code section are you looking at? Is there a number at the top of the paragraph? Are you looking somewhere in chapter 61?
Are you looking at HB 736?
Yes, that's what he's looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different bill than the accountability one is SB 1534. HB 736, the only section in that applies to you guys is the one that I copied and handed out to you. It's just Section 8, which is 61.0778. And what you're looking at right now are modifications they were making to the university's online report card.
Never mind.
Okay, yeah. But it does give you an example, if you did look at the bill that I sent out.
He was
It
just
gives you-
clarifying, none of that applied to us.
It shows you, though, how specific they are and what they want in the online resume for the universities. It's very defined. So,
Yeah, and Section 8 of 736 is the one that adds the new section in Chapter 61, which is our chapter.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to what we call institutional efficiency and effectiveness. And we have,
No, I'm not. This is Tammy and I having a little
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, well, it sounded like it should be something we all should be enjoying, you know?
I was doing I told you so.
And I agreed.
Okay, he did tell you, huh? Okay. We know for sure that the legislature would like to see information on tuition and fees for your institutions. We've come up with some measures that are kind of similar to what we report for the universities, but we'd like your suggestions on whether these things make sense for you. The instructional expenses as a percent of your core expenses, that would give everybody an idea of how much of what comes in or what you spend you use on instruction.
Or academic support and like 19.
The only thing that concerns me about that particular measure is that institutions define that differently.
Like in iPads. I mean, whatever.
As in iPads.
Yeah, we would.
All that will be from iPads. Whatever you reported as instruction expenses in iPads, that will be it. So it will be consistent. Now, again,
That's a different story.
It's percent of core expenses versus revenue. It's just a funny definition to me, I don't know.
Well, we got it from the expenses category here. And this is the way it looked, that under core expenses, they had instruction, this academic and institutional support, and other core expenses. So we just took this as a percent of the whole.
we'll appreciate anyway any suggestions that you have for this area.
See why I just like
The-
that iPads with that, you know, if you're operating a full-service residential campus, student services means something different than if you're
Yeah.
not. So that's why in iPads, those definitions are there in determining the core then.
Okay.
And I'd like to tell everybody that Paul Turcott from our finance group has joined us. He obviously has been suffering through this meeting up at his computer, so he knew when to come down for the finance portion. So if you have questions of a financial nature, we'll let Paul answer them for you.
So we are not the financial experts, so he can answer or talk with you about this.
But your intention in 20 is to use iPads.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't.
And for tuition also, so everything that it's about money will be from iPads because you don't report that kind of information to us. So again, for DeVry and Capella, we don't have anything about Texas specific. So that's why we need to talk with them how to get it.
You know, again, I guess so that this data is not misleading,
Yes.
particularly to, a novice who's looking at it. Would there be information about how it's dated and that sort of thing? Because they're going to be looking at data that's a couple of years old typically.
What we normally do is put up the dates that you see the dates up there?
For the fiscal year that is listed in iPad. So
Okay. Thank you. Voice.
Yes. Anybody have any suggestions or comments on these measures? Are they
or
okay with you?
other measures that
I'm not sure how appropriate, other than for Northwood, resident in 21 is.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we talk about resident schools
You
on
know-
the TWC side, but.
Yeah.
the way I saw it in iPads, the resident in Texas or whatever tuition for your schools is usually 0 or the same like out of state, and so it seemed to me like your tuition is the same no matter what.
Yeah, and that came from me copying and pasting from the universities, and there's an out-of-state
Right. It's a
tuition that's
two-tiered
different
tuition
for
structure.
in-state students, so that's how
okay.
that got there. So now it's not there anymore.
You mean a resident of the state in that definition?
But that's where I'd like to just mention, again, that's when we talk about peer or like institutions, that's what's, from our perspective, again, what's so important, because that does mean something with peer and like institutions that do have residential programs in that. Certainly if you don't.
This didn't mean
You do.
residential in that sense.
No, yeah.
Yes, but again, it's just another.
Yeah.
You don't have different tuition for Texas residents and out of Texas, right?
No, we don't.
You don't.
We don't.
So that's what is that
Right.
about.
And once again, we'll have boxes under a good portion of these measures, I hope. We still don't know, our IT section's going to have to make this happen for us. So at this point, it's just a Word document. So we'll try to make sure that there are plenty of boxes so that you can add things that differentiate your institution from others that they might want to compare you with. So hopefully that will lessen the problem to some degree. Paul, do you have any
Can you just scroll
comments that you'd like to make to this group?
No.
No, okay.
I have a comment from Capella. It's suggestion. It says link to the gainful employment data that instructs institutions must now report. It shows the average cost of tuition by program.
Okay.
Right.
And that's a suggestion from them.
Okay.
Already there, yeah.
But shouldn't that be enough a link if we do it in Excellence? Because
Well-
once it opens up, all the
But
whole
we could put it here too, and then you could use the same link, basically.
Actually, the 19, 20, and 22, my institution is quite different than most of them because we have a non-profit organization, has 5 different DBAs, and university is one of the DBAs. When audit comes, usually it does as a not-profit organization. So how do I break this down is very hard for me.
What do you mean? Because you should have instruction expenses, right?
I know, like a core when you say core expenses, as a not for whole profit or not for profit organization, it's a lot of bigger amount. So
That's Paul.
okay, maybe I
don't
should
know.
talk to him off the record.
I think you are reporting on the same report in iPad.
Yeah, it should
So
be just the way you do it in
same.
iPads.
So again, whatever you report in iPads under that category. The only thing is if you don't report under the same report like them, but I think I found you with them reporting data.
Just
What is the asterisk on 22 for total revenue?
That's probably left from the universities. So we didn't
And if you see under the
Oh,
total
I see.
revenue, there is tuition and fees, another measure. Tuition and fees as percent of total revenue. So it's another
think-
proposed measure there.
Yeah.
Not part of the total revenue.
And once again, this is kind of modeled after the universities, and it may not, these categories of revenue may not make any sense. What I see in iPads, at least for the for-profits, tuition and fees, sales and services of educational activities, and other core revenues
And
are
if
reported.
I think if you look in the definition, I copied and pasted the iPad's definitions. So it's extensive in whatever they include.
Okay.
And I think there are a little bit more categories there. Do you want the tuition and fees as percentage of total revenue or not? Should we consider it as a measure?
Do you want a revenue measure?
I don't know.
If you don't say yes or no, we'll consider it yes.
Well, what would be the purpose of the revenue
I'm not sure I understand
measure?
why.
Yeah, I don't know.
In terms of the accountability system,
Certainly see it in relation to state and federal funding or those things also, obviously, those institutions that are involved in discount rates, et cetera, that comes into play, but most of the institutions on this table wouldn't be involved.
the two-year institutions had a big discussion about this too. And one of the things we could add would be appropriations, state and federal funding, and could have zeros there for your institutions to
Which would
let.
eliminate just about everyone around this table, wouldn't it?
Their argument was that if you put tuition and fees and cost, it should be somewhere there that you don't get money from anywhere else.
So you could highlight the fact that you
For everybody who
actually
looks.
are not getting assistance from the state.
I guess the question I've got is about federal funds under 22.
Well, I've changed it now to match what we have in,
I'm
from your
sorry. Thank you.
iPads.
That's what it is.
All right, thank
I
you.
should have done that before, but I didn't.
Well, I don't know about your particular institutions, but when I looked in iPads and I looked for state and federal appropriations, I found some institutions that get some. I was so
Or they reported
surprised.
Or at least they report some, right?
Yeah,
Reported some. So I don't know.
Tuition
what is the-
equalization grant might be there, and that's not applicable to us either. So
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that was about. In case we put some appropriation from somewhere, if you reported some, that would be there.
Well, but last year they had the TCOG, I can't remember the name, that was the acronym, I can't remember, Texas Education something, and I think that was a 2-year deal, and I don't know if anybody around this table got it, but some of the other career colleges did,
Eligible. Yeah.
which would have would have had some money going to those schools, but for the most part, I think it's pretty much an anomaly when we get any money from anybody.
Yeah, it still may be helpful for the people that are going to look at this data and actually go through this website. It may be something that they would be interested to see, especially in context of tuition fees.
Well, our argument yesterday was if legislators are going to go there and look at it, they should be able to look at our for-profit institutions and see we don't get any money from them.
As a complete picture.
That's the way we looked at it yesterday.
I would agree.
Also, earlier, got your percentages of your expenses that you're spending in those core areas as well. So, because a lot of times they'll come back and look at that, for example, is your academic expenses the largest of your expenses? Now, regardless of what the dollar amount is, if that's X amount percentage or that's the highest percentage, right or wrong, they'll look at that, well, that's where you're investing the majority of your expenses is in the academic components, and then looking at the others.
That's why we put percentage.
Right,
So-
right, as opposed to a dollar.
Yeah.
And 60% of our revenue, for lack of a better word, is from donors. So for people like us, you have to add that.
Well, what I'd suggest in that case, because we're going to, all we have available to us is what is in
I
iPads.
think that it may be a category there.
Where, when you put a
Yeah.
box there, when we put the box there, you can put that in there. And I think that would be very interesting.
But I will look, and if I look and pull the donors, then I'll pull it for everybody. Because I seem to remember some donations, revenue from donations. Well, they may not be here. But
Okay, yeah, in the database.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to add that as a source of revenue if you report it? If it's not in iPads, then you can put it in the box.
Okay. And then we've added just,
Can I?
yeah.
George, were you saying that you think we should still have a line on there about federal funding to highlight that it's zero?
That's what we're all saying.
Yeah, I didn't say it.
Okay,
Somebody
I'm sorry.
did.
I've said it. All right.
Somebody said it.
All right, so,
Yeah.
That's what we did
Okay.
yesterday, but the two-year colleges in the same position.
so Janet, are you going to put that back in there?
Yes, I'll put it back under total, under revenues. Add
State and slash federal.
Hmm?
I can,
No,
yeah,
not.
okay.
State or federal?
I just think it's a good thing to make sure that we don't get, that's one reason where people say, well, your tuition's too high. Well, yeah, but I don't get this.
And for those of you that are
Yes,
like
help my students.
out-of-state institutions, obviously this was only for your Texas operations.
I even want to look, doesn't NACUBO may have, the National Association of College Business, they may have something for that to use anyways, or at least look at. Most of us would.
Do you
work with
report to
work
them?
Through them, not necessarily report to them, but,
Because what we've tried to do with this throughout is make sure you don't have to do any more work
Right.
just for us, for this.
We
and
appreciate that.
And NACUBO doesn't actually allow a lot of, they're mainly a non-profit organization.
that's what we work with, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and so the other measure that we have, if that's enough conversation about the revenues and stuff, if anybody has something else to add, please speak up. But we have some information on faculty at an institution. Do you want us to include information on your faculty?
It's just the count that you reported to iPads, and
Do you know if they report it to the state?
Yes, they do.
Any comments on this? We've just lumped them together. We haven't said full-time, part-time.
Yeah.
Do you think there are other breakdowns that would be significant and useful to show?
So it stays as it is.
Okay. I think we've gotten to the bottom of the accountability system. Thank you very much for going through that with us now. That's not the end, though. Don't rush off.
Don't get your hopes up.
We've got another half an hour. Okay. Thank you, Paul, for being here. Okay, so I apologize for those of you who are online. This is going to look really, really small, and for me to try to move around between these boxes probably won't work very well. So I hope you'll use the example that I sent out to you. And a good portion of these measures are ones we've already talked about. So I'll just kind of go through them, and then we can stop at the ones that are different. Enrollment. Oops, I'm not going to be at the top. Do you think that the fall enrollment or the annual enrollment would be more useful for your institutions? For the universities, we report fall, so that would be most similar to what we do for the publics.
Again, we have that problem with you reporting annually to us.
Right.
They report every
Annual
semester.
yesterday, right?
Yeah, we did.
I would say annually too for non-traditional institutions. That's a better measure.
Consensus that that's okay for everybody, annual? Okay.
I think I'm behind here. I think I got a comment about the faculty.
Okay.
It's from Bellhaven. And research, I guess, is the subject. I would like to see a box under this area so those who want can input information regarding our faculty's involvement in research and professional activities. These are required areas on which to base merit raises to our faculty.
Okay.
So in excellence,
No, under the faculty, he suggests.
Faculty, research and professional activities.
guess we used to have faculty in excellence also.
Yeah, I know.
Might be a good idea to check to see how many people think that would be applicable to institutions.
Well, the nice thing about the boxes are,
Or you can just
you only fill them in
put it
if you have
want to.
something you want
Yeah,
to put
I
in there.
understand.
And what we've, oops, I can't spell. What we've done for the public institutions with accountability won't matter for the first time you'll have to enter things, but what we do for the second year of accountability is roll over all your previous year's comments into the boxes so that you won't have to retype everything, or you'll at least be able to see what you put in for the prior year. So helps a little bit with figuring out what you might want to say.
And the suggestion was for the research section.
Oh,
Put
okay.
that on research.
Okay, we did away with the whole research
Yeah.
section, so.
Yeah.
We won't have a research center.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so now back to enrollment. You see we've broken it out by some groups. Because we're required to do this all on one page in the statute, if possible, we kind of truncated some of the information. We didn't break out international in the race ethnicity categories. Do you think you would like international broken out?
I think we probably would, if possible.
Okay.
If you don't have, basically, it will be not applicable.
Or
listed.
be zero. Okay. Then persistence, okay, this is when we need to talk about persistence of first-time, full-time credential-seeking undergraduates. Would you like to do this, or would you like to do either in addition to or in replacing this, the persistence of your first-time students, first time at your institution, like we discussed for the persistence measure?
Yes, that one.
The latter.
Okay?
Yeah, we're doing it anyway, right?
Yeah, well, we're running it anyway.
We can assume that all your students are credential seeking, right? Because for public, community colleges and universities, we have an item where they are asked what is their intent, and there are people who just their intent is to take a course or two for their personal enrichment or to increase their job skills without intending to graduate. And if they responded that, we remove them from cohorts.
Because they're
We collect
not
that
going to-
information too.
So.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
So basically, we'll do the same for you. So if that's what we'll do, then we should leave the degree seeking portion.
Okay.
I'm not sure how your students do it, but if they come for 3 courses, you don't want to be penalized for graduation.
I just wanted to clarify, are we still only talking about undergraduates for this measure or for first?
Yes.
We're talking,
Well, for this one, it's undergraduates.
So both sort of permutations of this measure would only be for undergraduates?
right, and
Okay.
for an institution like yours, you may not have anything in there.
But our heading says degrees offered, associates, bachelors, and masters.
But that's for degrees.
For degrees awarded,
Degrees offered.
we were working on this persistence measure. That's the second one down. I'm kind of going down.
The header.
He's talking in the
Yeah,
header.
her question though, and it looks to me like the whole one page is for all schools.
Line 5.
Yes, but for them, this measure may be not applicable if they don't have any undergraduates.
I got it, because of.
But they will have other things here.
Undergraduates.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe we should, I mean, it says undergraduate. So if they don't have any, then, but they will have the page.
Okay, the next one down in that first column is percent of graduates from preceding FY who are enrolled in or employed. That's the same one that we discussed. So we'll go over now to the top where we've got cost.
Can we go back? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I missed the comment here.
Okay.
It's concerning the persistence
Yes.
section. The comment is, could the first time and in red underlined full-time be removed?
Well, we said full-time is removed because we include everybody, and we said first time, we are using the measure that we discussed previously, first time at your institution.
Okay. And if I could figure out how to make this a little bigger, I can't see the corner down there. Oops, not quite that big.
Like a little bar on the bottom right.
Yeah, I can't see that because of the table.
by the table.
Yeah. So, anyway,
Maybe, you can
yeah,
do it
and
there.
for those of you who are online, you can read what's up there in the,
There you go.
yeah, up here in this line is what it looks like now. Persistence of first-time credential seeking
I think
students.
first time at that institution credential seeking, right?
Yeah.
Or at this institution.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll fix
Yeah.
it,
We get it.
but you get the idea. I put the, at your institution back here. So, anyway, okay. Thanks, Paul. Okay, so now on to the one that's the cost, and this will be similar probably to what we've talked about with tuition and fees.
And we'll remove the 30 hours. It will be for an academic year. We take that information from iPads and you report annual tuition and fees.
That's
The
too small for
other
me.
room and board of campus and all that, again, it will be from iPads.
And you said annual?
Yes. I assume it's annual full-time, but I didn't see the full-time anywhere in iPads, so.
Okay. For the universities, we also have graduate tuition and fees.
I'm not sure they have.
You're kind of mixing apples and oranges here and expecting it to total up.
Oh, you think that people would expect it?
They're either going to be looking at graduate or undergraduate.
Okay.
Because you have a total at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'd only have one or the other.
Yeah, we could put total undergraduate.
Hmm.
Oops. What?
Just take.
How'd
So
I
what
do that?
gets pulled out of iPads? What in iPads populates this table? Just the fees, right?
Tuition and fees, it's one
Where do you
measure.
get the other information, like?
There is an item where you report off-campus cost, room and board.
Oh, okay.
And it's also the cost of books and other costs that will be included in other costs.
Also, maybe our institution, we provide on-campus living. So when you put as off-campus,
We
that's
had to-
totally different.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think we discuss here when we look at the room and board, which one, off-campus or on-campus? Because there are, in iPads you report both. I mean,
We chose off-campus because we thought it applied to most
so,
institutions.
yeah.
So,
But if it's important, should we, I mean, I'm not sure we have room
Yeah.
to add other lines. We need to stick with the page.
Is this for institution-based or on the average?
No, it's institution-based, but
Institution-
if you can look, see there, it's, it's the peers also.
yeah, you see, in many of these categories on the online resume, we have peer institution average, and that's why we were discussing the groups with you at the beginning. The way it works for the publics is that's what's required, and so we've done the same for you. That's one of the reasons that we'd like to have some kind of closure on the question of whether we want peer groups or not. But this information on the financial aid, I think we've already discussed, so we'll just skip over that.
Can I ask another
Yeah.
question on that, please? Where does the in-state peer average come from?
Well,
From the same place, your peers is when we'll decide on those groups.
Okay.
We'll
Those
calculate.
will be.
Okay.
So whatever group you are in, that means the average for that group.
Those are plug numbers that'll be plugged
Yeah.
by the
By
board.
us.
Right.
Okay.
And everything in this, we'll put in for you.
And it will be the same methodology, the same source.
Okay, before we go, we have another,
Yeah.
another comment, and
Okay.
this is in reference to we just made before about research.
Oh,
She says, I don't think the research category should be deleted. I just think it should be put back in, and those who want can input information in it about their faculty, I'm sorry.
One institution.
I think faculty who are involved in such activities and an example of their willingness to stay up to date in their professions, and I think this sets us apart from other institutions.
thank you for that comment. Instruction, we talked about student-faculty ratio, and we'll get it from iPads for you and for your in-state peers. Graduation rate will try to mirror in some way what we've what you've talked about on the accountability side for that one, which will probably be.
I think here we discussed the graduation rate of first time in college, and we also discussed the first time at institution. So which one we put here? Because we discussed that we'll run both for accountability system.
First time at your institution.
Yeah, I'd like to stick with that.
So we'll call it maybe sort of
Yeah, we'll call it,
completion rate.
Okay.
I want to go back on a peers deal, because
Yeah.
I don't remember discussing this yesterday, nobody brought it up, but, so what you're saying is, we will only be compared against each other, not against the community colleges or the
Right.
public universities.
Only the ones that are in your group.
And your group will be institutions like you. It won't be a mix of peers with public and, no. Now, if you want to look at the public institutions for your own,
Okay.
We don't have any kind of comparison.
Degrees and certificates, that will come from our information, and we'll add some other categories in there for those institutions that have, we make group doctoral and professional together, but we'll add that in.
Will you add certificates
Yeah, that's what that
less than associates? It's a question.
Yeah, I'm thinking, actually.
Not a demand.
Yeah. We haven't done certificates for the publics that offer bachelor's degrees. We are going to do them for the two-year institutions because we feel like their mission's a little bit different, but
Good.
how many of you do offer less than bachelor's certificates?
We award associate's degrees, but that's,
Yeah, and
Yes.
we've got associates listed.
yeah.
Yes.
You mean less than associates?
Oh, yeah, less than associates, okay.
no.
Oh, less than associates even, okay. Okay. And this, we will, on the funding, we will match what we've done over on the accountability side and get those from iPads. So I think that pretty much covers everything except the groups.
I want to raise another issue
Okay.
with the groups. I was counting here, I seem to have about 5 institutions, like College of Biblical Studies Houston, Arlington Baptist College, Austin Graduate School of Theology, Baptist Missionary Association Theological Seminary, and Oblate School of Theology. They seem to have in the name something theology. Do you think, it would make sense for them to be a group?
I can tell you one reason why it would make good sense, because many of us get lots of donations. And so, for instance, our tuition is low because we're supported by donors. You guys have to go out and make sure that that tuition covers your expenses.
So it would make sense.
It would make sense. It would make sense in terms of being able to compare a Bible college or a theological school with a for-profit and with the public.
And do you think Norwood would fit better in a group with them than the rest?
No.
Compare with what is the closest to you?
Those are two different questions.
Yes.
What do we
I
fit
don't-
and what's the closest?
Yeah.
No.
But because we can group all of the theological
Maybe
schools?
not-for-profit schools can be a group. If that's many,
Okay.
if it's
How-
enough.
How many other not-for-profits are there?
Talking about.
Oh, yeah, well,
There are several.
uh-huh,
Not here
Like we
today,
are
but
yeah,
not-for-profit.
okay.
That might be a good group.
Would it be not-for-profits supported by donors, though? Are there not-for-profits that are not supported by donors?
We
Do donors?
We do have a donors, but it will not be compared to yours.
Yeah, right.
We're trying to change that.
I mean, if we compare just based on donors, we may have you by yourself. I don't know really enough about this to say one way or another. I was just looking at what other way we can group you to make more sense. It doesn't make sense to have one or two institutions in a group.
No.
Now, 5 institutions seem to be. I was looking at the medical, but there are just 2 or 3.
so you have a lot of allied health and nursing.
Yes,
Right.
but those are
But-
mostly 2-year, and they
Yes.
came yesterday.
Yeah, so here for,
But there are a lot of Bible colleges in Texas. Criswell,
Yeah, a lot
well,
of
for
Dallas Christian.
I think Criswell doesn't get financial aid, Title IV. So not getting Title IV, they're not included in the bill.
Okay.
So, yes, they are on our list. They never reported to us. They never reported to iPads. So,
Yes.
Just one thought comes to mind. I mean, in categorizing these different areas of education, executive education is really a unit into itself. I mean, people like Tulane and University of Phoenix and even UTs and Baylors and A&Ms, we do executive MBAs and some other graduate executive courses, weekend-based, weeknight-based, designed for full-time professionals, don't fit into this format at all. I think it'd be great if we would be compared as a group, but it's different. UT runs an executive program in Houston. They run one here too. But we're not categorized in anything that makes sense.
well, we are categorizing institutions, not programs, and I think that's why you have this, because I assume it's not the only thing you do.
But in Houston it is.
Well, that's the
In
only thing
Texas.
we do in Texas.
But this whole thing comes right back to, this is all of a sudden something just kind of blew up for me. And I can tell you, I'm also here representing career colleges and schools of Texas and the 135 members we have there. When you're telling us, our peers, that you're going to compare me with Westwood and somebody, and my other 2-year institutions, the whole intent of what we were trying to do, Fred, over the last couple of years in doing this, is to take us and compare us with the public institutions. Because I would bet as a group, we would all say that we do, I don't know how to say this the right way, but I would say our outcomes and things like that are going to be significantly different than theirs. To compare us to each other for the customers and the legislatures doesn't really make sense. If we're not being compared to the public institutions at the community college level, et cetera, then the whole thing is kind of a moot point.
That's what you want, to have peer groups from the public sector? I mean, when it says groups and peer groups, nobody says to be public or for profit. I mean
when you do
really, we
groups-
don't have a.
But I don't think we ever explained that a group was, we were just looking at our institutions of the 50 schools that fall in there, you'd have 8 that are small, medium, and large, or whatever. But the reality of it is, and other people can jump in here, I think we do want to be compared to the public institutions.
Yes.
Because I think our outcomes are much better, our placements are better, and things of that nature. And that's why we sat on the employment deal, let's do apples and apples. But if you're doing apples and apples to just the people sitting around the table, this whole thing doesn't mean anything.
That's why we've tried to make the measures as much as possible similar to the ones that are there for yesterday, the two-year community colleges, and today the universities, start using that as a starting point, and then modifying it in ways that make sense for your institutions. But anybody who is using this information, they're going to have to do some work on their own part to.
But that's not, but the whole thing then doesn't make sense. If you're going to use this for legislatures to compare me with Westwood or with some of the other institutions here in a four-year level, or the two-year institutions against each other, I don't think we've accomplished anything. If you're going to accomplish something, we need to have it, having the peer groups being the peer groups that offer the same kind of degrees, whether they're public or non-profit or public institutions, for-profit or whatever. So I think the whole thing, you know, and that never came up yesterday the way we just discovered. It never did come up like that. We would have had a major discussion with those people that would have
We
been here
didn't
yesterday.
think to bring it up. I
Well, I
mean,
know,
you
because
know,
we didn't-
and you didn't think either.
Well, no, because a
No,
peer
I thought
group, we
we-
were saying peer groups
we-
offer the same type of degrees
Yeah.
that I offer as a two-year or a four-year institution compared to the public institutions.
Well, we were talking about trying to have in-state peer averages that made sense because they were somebody who's somewhat similar to you.
The argument that I'm hearing here is that you consider that the publics are similar to you in terms of what you offer.
Well,
But where do the groupings actually come in, either on the resume or the accountability?
They come in there because you can see the peer averages reported.
Otherwise, it's
Throughout.
they're irrelevant.
But
I have to
it-
do my own research to compare my placement rate to the UT's placement rate, right? I mean, I can't look
Well-
at this and get that.
No.
Click on the
Placement rate, if you use the same measure, you can look at UT's online resume. And
To go to UT's website to.
no, that would be to our website for UT and pull out the resume for them.
If you grouped us with public institutions, I'm not going to be able to compare those kinds of outcomes.
If you go to,
Yeah.
but not on
They
that.
are our peer group, they would.
No, the only
No,
place
no.
there, only place that shows up is right there.
one of the things that makes iPad so useful for us for internal purposes is that you can actually select the cohort of peer institutions that you apply yourself and compare yourself to. So if there is a way to easily pull a report from your website, if that's something that, I get that we can pull individual institutions, but we can actually conglomerate all their information
Right.
into one
So,
report.
so basically, you would like other type of groups than what we put together.
We're going to have to define then the variables around which we're going to compare because we
Right.
just changed everything.
Well,
Right.
and the issue for us, there are several issues. One, being able to run any data that we need to run. We have to be able to do that readily. And two, and more importantly, having an IT section that's going to complete this for us. There's no way we're going to be able to do what iPads has done for institutions. And it is very nice, and I agree, it would be nice to be able to do that. That's not going to be something that we're going to be able to do. And if you really want to do that, you can go out and use iPads. What we're trying to do is fulfill the expectations of the legislature when they pass these bills. And we know that they're going to want to see certain things here. Now, it may not be the best comparison in the world. If somebody wants to make the comparisons that you're talking about, they can go out and use the iPad system.
But even our system can be used because you can go to the interactive, and that's why we try to use the same definitions.
So if
So
we use,
you can pick the public schools and use the same definition.
if we go back to the system that's in place today, and you had your drop downs, and your first categories were universities, two-year colleges, somewhere you're going to have career schools and colleges. How are they grouped within those broad categories? Because we just added ourselves as a new category, and then within that, we're trying to decide how to break it down. So, are those categories broken down into peer
Yes.
groups, and
Yes.
what was
and
the
that's,
methodology used there?
Yeah.
Is it similar to the
It's-
way we're trying to approach it here? Or?
For the two-year institutions, where basically community colleges in small, medium, and large, and very large, considering the size and the, in a way, also the location. Usually the smaller ones are more rural than the larger ones. So they are grouped that way. The universities take into account the number of programs, how many doctoral programs and or graduate programs, research money that they receive. So there are several. For example, UT Austin and A&M are a group by themselves. And then you have University of Houston, UNT, Texas Tech. Those emerging research institutions that are another group.
And how are the community colleges broken out?
Mostly by size. And
size and location is key. So large, medium.
But the community colleges all within themselves have the same mission. And the universities, and public
funding.
universities' missions are more similar than what we have in a group like this. The many places now in statute, they refer to the accountability groups when they talk about doing certain things. And so they've kind of been instituted. But for you guys, we're trying to match, as we're required to, what we do for the public institutions.
That's really the effort. There's two things. If we were just talking about the data or comparisons, I think most of us might be fine just that separate. But it's the marketing when you're compared to other institutions, because as Tom, I think, was just saying, they offer degrees similar to a public or private or community college or whatever. They're in that marketplace competing. But what happens when you go to the website, we've dealt with this since 1966, our institution. We physically have been here in Texas since 1966, operating a full-service residential campus. But because of the legislation and not having SACs and having a higher learning commission, all those other variables that we're just like with, we're out. But we show up in a whole different category or a whole different page. And so to the consumer who's out looking, you don't fall into, you're not competing degree or whatever it might be. It's, well, you're this type of institution that offers these degrees or this type of institution. And that's how I look at it, more from the marketing part of it. And I think that's, I don't want to speak for Tom, but kind of was talking about, when you're out in the marketplace, you're going head to head, your 4-year degree or whatever, with the publics, the profits, not-for-profits, etc. They're not delineating there at that point, but that's what the coordinating board does. Or I shouldn't say the coordinating board does. Yes. But when it appears on the website, Fred and I have had these conversations before going through. We don't even show up on some of those you go to where you locate colleges or universities in the area. We don't even show up on some of those because of how it's filtered through, which wouldn't be appropriate either.
If I pull up Sam Houston State University, can I find out can I find out who their peers are?
Right. Yeah, you can. And it says at the top of each, well, let me see. This document that I have there is the one about universities being divided into groups and how they're grouped, and that is on the website. I can't tell which of these is which anymore. Nope.
See, what I would like to see is if I was looking for, in Houston, all the 4-year marketing degrees, I would like to see all the institutions pull up that have 4-year marketing degrees. Not separated by, that would be my first sort. Show me all the institutions in this area that offer this degree.
Well, I know that we're supposed to have...
You have that on TWC website. They have
TWC, Workforce Committee, a whole different...
And I know that we have gotten from the independents, their institutions, their program inventory, so we can put those out there. And I think we're working on trying to make that happen. The same thing should happen with you guys.
I think you guys got that last year.
Yes, well, we have it now.
Yeah. Here, I know this is small. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, you can see as required. Oh, yeah, that thing down
that
here.
Thing,
okay,
yeah.
That thing.
There.
Yeah. Okay. The top of, and this is all specified in statute, the top of each one of the online resumes starts with location, and then you can see they're part of the doctoral accountability peer group.
Okay, and there's all who's in their
Then
group. Yes.
they're
Okay.
all the list of all the other, and because on the universities for the publics, we report some out-of-state peers, you can see the out-of-state peers are listed there as well.
I think it's important, though, for us all to understand, and correct me if I don't say this correctly.
Okay.
That the current accountability system that's in place does attempt among the public universities and colleges to try to group, for peer group purposes, for this system, other public universities and colleges that are similar to them.
Right.
Yes.
And so this proposal, or Tom's suggestion, really is a change
It
from
would
what
be-
you've been doing.
Yeah, it would be, and what we're required by legislation to do. So it would be a change for us and not a change, I'm sure, that our IT section and our limited staff
And
could,
yet, I really
could do in time.
And I can see it, let's say we attempt to do these mixed groups, definitely we won't be able to do it without them at the table. So because I think UT Austin wants to know for sure if they are put in the same group with whoever they are put, they would want to be at the table saying, yes, we agree or not.
What would be nice is if I've come up with, say, I'm a high school student, I've come up with 3 universities I am interested in. 2 are public and one's a for-profit. I could highlight them, I could push a button and it'd populate a spreadsheet that shows all those comparisons.
Well, because that's what we try to do in interactive. You are just not there yet, but
it doesn't cross.
It doesn't cross, but you need 3 clicks and then put them together in Excel.
Yeah.
But theoretically, those measures are, again, like graduation rate.
Mhm.
Is that thing with not quite the same because of the first time in college
Right.
issue that we all discuss. If we can run it the same, it will be the same.
We have to use the exact same
Yeah,
measures as the
So,
public institution.
but there are some that are exactly the same, so,
Well, let's go back again on the groupings then, because I think on the groupings then, you don't want to be grouped in a group of 7 or 8 schools, because you want to be compared against all 50.
That's right.
I would say the same thing for the 2-year colleges. We want to, because I could have an ITT Technical Institute that started last year that's got 200 students, and one that's been in business for 20 years has got 800 students. But they're still offering the same things, it's just a different geographical area and things of that nature. So I think you're really, if you break them down into small groups, you're not really giving the person, it's like this gentleman was talking about from Northwood. It doesn't give somebody a real true picture of that institution's capabilities or what they've done.
well, for us, it's easier to consider you a group. But do you want a school that has 100 students to be compared with University of Phoenix that has 8,000? Because no matter what we are saying, operating and having a big school, it's a very different story than having 100 students. So for us, that's fine, but that's not really, when you start doing the comparison and say, oh, wait a minute, I look like this compared because we are not the same, because they have 8,000 students and I have 60.
Private?
So it's
only going to be
Gabriella,
private.
and the same is true for
And
the
that's gonna be
not-for-profits that are supported by
Yes.
donors.
I mean,
Do you really want to compare your tuition with ours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, 1 question and 2
That-
comments. So
Okay.
I think peers should be defined by the programs offered and student populations at the institutions, not by the institution's source of funding. That goes back to what we said
And,
before.
You know,
The questions,
with you on things like that, but
are the ICUT institutions reporting to the accountability system?
no,
Yeah, I just-
no. They are not included in the executive order, they are not included in these bills.
See, this was the one I was talking about before. We're a private 4-year residential institution, but I think this is one that we don't college match up. If you click
And
on
this is our-
private 4-year, residential, we wouldn't come up on this as a college match.
Because probably,
Because we fall into the career proprietary schools because of legislation.
Yeah.
and the way you are reporting to us.
Right.
Now, would we come up as a two-year institution? If you did that, would the proprietary schools come up in this one?
Right. I mean, once you start reporting and having the same measures, we'll try to add you everywhere.
Okay.
Just from a grouping standpoint, for University of Phoenix, rather than break it down by city where we have campus operations, I'd prefer to be it by state. So much like DeVry has Texas, be University of Phoenix, Texas, and I think that
We discussed this internally. You are approved separately. You show up in our records as different institutions. You show up in iPads as different institutions.
But I
you
believe
don't
in-
show up as Phoenix, Texas.
you can't pull it in iPads by state.
Not really, but it's about the approval you got. DeVry is approved as one.
I see.
So it's approved one for Texas. It's not approved DeVry in different cities.
So those are issues that you would deal with, Fred, and the academic affairs on, when you have questions about the data and about the groupings. Those are.
But see, this is
those
what I
are
hopefully
things-
see. If I'm a prospective student or parent or whatever, and this is what I come to, this is the search tool that I'm driven to look for institutions. All of the data here, which is good, you may not get to.
Yeah.
Or you may never get into my 5 schools I'm looking at
Well-
because I didn't come up into here. I know
But-
that's separate from what we're doing here.
No, but we hope to add you everywhere. So far, we didn't have you to add because you weren't part of accountability system. We didn't run the measure. We didn't run much for you, except this exit report. We didn't run reports for you.
Right. But this
But
one
now-
here, we could have been, or I would say it could have been part of before. Not the
Yeah.
accountability. I agree with you there. But
This
kind of
comes
stuff.
from accountability in the
Right.
end.
Okay.
A lot of
Anyway. Yeah, so where are we on the groups?
Okay.
That's-
So the groups, do you think, I'm trying to think how I've changed this work.
Well, and it says only groups if appropriate. In the legislation, we could perhaps not group you, and then we wouldn't, and use you as a, I don't know, I hate to do a statewide average of
Do you
all
want
of
a
you, but
wide average?
I know that, I know from having worked with the senator who did the online resume bill, peer averages are highly important to her, and she's going to expect to see them. So what we don't want is for us to do something this time that will cause a change in statute next time, and they'll tell us exactly how your groups are going to be constructed. So
Exactly right.
In the other categories, in the traditionals, what's the norm in terms of peer group size? In other words, we looked at these and we thought these groups were getting kind of small.
Yeah, I-
They're down
I
to 5 and
thought so
6 and
too.
7.
Yeah.
But how does that compare with the other?
well, like for the research
traditionals?
universities, only two. But, so that's a very small group.
Others are
But
6.
most of them are, I'd say 7 or 8 institutions.
So
We
we're
have-
not outside of that then, I mean.
Yeah.
What's wrong with doing peers of all career schools and colleges that are for-profit based on the highest degree offered?
That's what I tried to do. Because,
I got a lot of small groups.
well, it does,
Or
So we can do, because I heard this discussion about the nonprofit religious-based schools, we can have them in a group, all of them together, regardless of the level of degree.
And the size.
And the size. That's one group. And the rest of you will discuss.
I was gonna say, I want to get in the group that gets me to the 4-year private residential, whatever that group is. That's the one I want to be in. Accountability or not, okay? That's
gonna get us
that's
there,
the
right?
one I
I
want to
cannot
be in.
guarantee that one. So for the rest,
those would give us some pretty big groups.
well, basically,
By highest degree.
By degree.
so it will be
up to bachelor degree only and bachelor and above. So these two big groups that you have, group 1 and group 2, without any subgroups. My issue is, what do I do with Capella, Kaplan, University of Illinois at Chicago, and others that are these online, that at this point I don't know a thing about them except what Fred has, what level of degrees they are approved for in Texas. We can use that, whatever they are approved for. So I would like some input from them.
Okay, we'll make another stab at doing the groupings and try to come up with something that
But
maybe is a little different.
I want to understand clearly that what you are proposing now is, for example, for bachelor and above group will be all these schools, regardless of size, even though DeVry seems to have 8,000 and other, like North American College Houston has 21. That's what I'm hearing.
I think what John Allen said was, if you're bachelor degree and above, you're a group.
Yes.
But if you're just diploma certificates and associates, that would be a separate group.
That's what
the
I
group we
was
did
talking
yesterday.
about. But I have a North American College in Houston with an enrollment of 21 people reported that would be in the same group with the University of Phoenix Houston campus that reported 4,200 students in the same group.
Are they all online?
Highest, they are not online. They
No, a
are
lot of your
physical.
students are face-to-face,
Face
aren't
to
they?
face.
Uh-huh.
So basically, they will be in the same group, bachelor and above degrees offered. That's what I want to be clear about. So see the dilemma that I have. I'm comparing 21 students with 8,000 that DeVry.
Why do we have to compare
No, they are
joint
not.
programs and not individual programs? Just bachelor's, just graduate degrees, just professional degrees. That's more meaningful comparison for all the public here in Houston. Combining degrees, I think, is what distorts the data.
Well, there are many institutions that have multiple levels.
Right, but a particular student is interested in one level. So I'm interested in a bachelor's degree, not a bachelor's and a master's and a doctorate degree. So getting the composite doesn't help me make a choice. In our case, we offer only 2 degrees in 3 programs, MBAs and Masters of Finance, right?
But if you have only graduate, that's another discussion.
Right.
We have the religious schools. I understand we have, how many? 3? No, I was thinking graduate-only programs. We can have that group that have only graduate, no undergraduate at all. And because we put peer groups by institution, we don't peer group students.
And that's what I was trying to suggest, that, as Jim said before, when your prospective students are considering schools, they're considering schools for a particular degree, not for a combination of degrees. So if you want to make this information more meaningful for them, you'll have to group it in the way that they make the decision.
We don't do that for public either, because that means we have to put an institution in 3 groups.
Absolutely.
And then it starts being confusing.
Then you don't know what data to report for.
Right. Which one we put on your page? When we have one page, which one we put?
Well, the page should be degree specific and not school specific. That's what makes kind of decision making easier for your prospective
But
students.
that's unfortunately not the way our data is too.
So as our population moves up and down throughout the years, would we move into different peer groups?
Yes, the
If
groups
we
are,
remain with the size.
the groups are neither permanent nor prescriptive. That's the way we've always phrased it. So the public groups have moved around. Some institutions have gotten extra doctoral degrees and done a lot more research, and they move up. Some of them have done the opposite, and they move down. So, yeah.
And if you just offer now, or you are approved, because we had that situation, let's say up to a bachelor degree, and you start offering masters, or then you move in the other group.
But all of these things are institutional
based.
Yeah. examples of information. They're not a program level thing, which I know yesterday with the discussion about the two-year institutions, most of what they do to report to TWC is really program based. What we do at this institution, I mean, this agency is usually institutional level. So, but we don't want to take up any more of your time. We do thank you for all your comments and your hard work with us here today. We will send back to you a copy of what it seems like we decided, and we will work on, continue to work on the groupings and see if we can come up with something. You know, it's possible that we may decide groups don't make any sense in this case. But I think we'll get in trouble if we don't. So. And that's not good either. But I feel for you. Why not just